Hello and welcome guys. Make yourselves comfortable and enjoy. This is Affinity: Chaos. Chapter 201. Boom. Gray's first 4 attacks collided in the ice sphere, exploding on impact. But it didn't even get as much as a glance from Gray and Void. The reason for that was because his secret 5th attack appeared above Ethan's at the same time as well. The 3rd array he made, which he used in secretly unleashing the 5th attack, was larger than the previous 2. Since his target was large, he wanted to use a big attack that might cover over half of Ethan's body. Of course, he made sure the attack was of the fire element, since he thought it was more effective against the Ethanth, the ice dragon. Ethanth, who was running in Gray's direction while still sending out ice streams, immediately sensed the attack that appeared above it. It immediately stopped attacking and tried to dodge to the side, but when it wanted to move, it realized that moving actually became quite difficult. It looked below it only to realize that at least 1/4 of its leg had sunk into the thick mud, which formed all of a sudden beneath it. It couldn't struggle free quickly given the time, so it spread out its wings, hoping to fly away in the crucial moment. Ethanth managed to flap its wings twice, but it was unfortunately not enough to get it out of the mud before the attack landed fiercely on its back. Boom! A large explosion rang out, but that wasn't all. Void attacked as well, sending out a lightning, fire, and darkness element attack all at the same time, aiming for one place. Seeing this, Gray also attacked as well. He didn't know if these attacks could kill it, but he hoped they should at least wear it down. After almost 20 seconds of continuous attacks, the duo stopped and Void returned to Gray's shoulder, panting. Even Gray wasn't having an easy time as well. It had been over 20 minutes since Ethanth was chasing and beating them up, and since then, he haven't had time to rest. Void, on the other hand, managed to rest during the time they spent running. It's just that, compared to Gray, he was the one who had taken most of the beating. "Do you think we got it?" Void asked, looking at the smoky and dusty place where they unleashed barrages of attacks. "No, we need to leave here." Gray wasn't optimistic about their chances if killing Ethanth from those attacks, but he wanted to find a place to rest. Hopefully Ethanth wouldn't chase after them anymore. According to his calculations, his friends should get to the array within 3 hours or so, and he's currently about 4 hours away from the array. He ran following the route he planned out, while also hoping to find a secure spot to rest. He didn't wait to confirm if their attacks damaged Ethanth, but he hoped it did, even if it was by a small amount. 4 minutes after Gray and Void left the forest, the dust and smoke still hadn't completely died down, but Ethan's figure could properly be seen now. It was currently sprawling on the muddy ground and letting out slight painful groans. It was thoroughly stumped by the duo's attacks, and he nearly had the impulse to kill them. It didn't remember when last it was hit by this much. "Clever human, annoying cat, you're lucky my power is restrained, or else I'd have beaten you so bad for this that you wouldn't even recognize yourselves. If not for that old man, I wouldn't even go easy on them." PH. Ethan's voice could be heard coming from the dust. "I'll let them rest for 1 hour. I need to recover from their attacks." Ethan's figure moved, and it soon walked out from the dust. When it came into sight, a transparent ice scale-like armor could be seen covering its scales, but some parts of it were missing, and its scales had multiple black spots. Of Gray and Void's attacks, the one he hated the most was Void's darkness attacks, followed by Gray's fire element attacks. Both attacks were so powerful that even though its present strength was 5 stages ahead in Gray's case, and 6 stages ahead in Void's case, they still managed to break its defenses. After Ethanth came out from the dust and laid down at the side of a tree, the old man appeared in front of him once again. "To think they would be able to break your defense," the old man said with a soft smile. "If they were by themselves, they wouldn't have a chance." Ethanth said disapprovingly, "But you have to admit, they're quite strong, and clever as well. Even I didn't expect them to trap you in such an ingenious way. If you were facing any other duo, I don't think you'd be in such a sorry state." The old man said, "HMPH, stop praising the brat. If not for you saying I shouldn't kill him, he would have been long dead." Ethanth scoffed before saying, "But you have to give them credit, they tried." The old man said, "Fine." Ethanth nodded. "So why are you here?" the old man asked while staring in another direction. He could currently see Gray and Void running away. They've even left the forest, and were currently heading in the direction of a building. I'm giving them a 1-hour break. At least they should rest a little, or they might truly die from my attacks, Ethan said before closing its eyes. With how powerful it originally was, it didn't have any problems with locating the duo with his spiritual sense. Although its true strength was restricted, it could still easily use its original powerful spiritual sense. Okay, try to push him harder this time. You're beating the cat too much, the old man said. He had been watching the battle, and compared to Gray, he noticed Void was the one who was getting more beat up by Ethanth. I feel the brat wants the cat to be beaten up, so I'm just helping him, Ethanth said. Oh, I also noticed his physical defense was amazing when I struck him previously, it added. Just like him. Okay, try to push him harder. I want to see how strong he truly is, the old man said before disappearing. Oh, I already have your crystal. The old man's voice rang out from the void, but he was nowhere to be seen. Chapter 202. 30 minutes later, Gray and Void could be seen sprinting out of a forest and heading in the direction of a building. After they left the forest where they were battling with Ethanth, they've passed by multiple buildings as well as 2 other forests before getting here. Gray didn't even know how far he had run, but he estimated that he should be at least 40 kilometers away from Ethanth. It only now did he decide to rest. Once he's recovered, he would head towards the array. I think it stopped chasing us, Void said while relaxing on Gray's shoulder. Me too, but it's best we move out after resting for a while, Gray replied before entering the compound. He looked around, and other than some beasts, he saw nothing else. The beasts were all in the arcane plane, so all Gray did was to release his far superior aura, scaring the beasts away. He made some defensive arrays outside the room he entered before shutting his eyes to enter into a meditative state. His body greedily started to absorb the elemental essence in the area, rejuvenating the tired Gray, and also filling up his wind and lightning element reserve. Of all his elements, they were the ones he had used the most, since he constantly had to channel them in his body while he was running away. So when he was absorbing the elemental essences, he focused more on them, since he didn't know if he might have to run away once more. Gray's wind and lightning elemental reserve in his elemental beads were almost filled, while his other elements were once again filled up. If it were to be someone else, then they would have needed at least nearly double the time he took in almost refilling his wind and lightning element. But compared to others, his absorption rate was faster. Void, let's go. He opened his eyes and said. He was currently feeling energetic and was ready to continue his journey. Now, he wanted to leave this place more than anything else. If he continued moving at this speed, then he might get there within another 3 hours or so, making him an hour late, given the time he estimated Klaus and the others would get there. Okay. Void, who was previously resting, opened his eyes and jumped into his shoulder. Gray came out of the room, exited the building, and once again started his race towards the array. Unknown to them, Ethanth had already begun its chase once again. Gray and Void quickly passed through different terrains in 15 minutes, from entering a forest to going through a tall grassy field to currently being in a mountain. Just before they got to the peak of the mountain, Void suddenly stood up and looked behind them. Crap, it's coming, he said to Greg hastily. The dragon? Asked Gray. Void nodded with a sour face before replying, yes. If he truly had the crystal, he would have returned it after going through the first round of beating from Ethanth. But now, he not only lost the crystal, he was being beaten for it. Although everything was his fault in the first place, he was still stumped by how the crystal suddenly disappeared. When they were previously in the building resting, he even checked his spatial storage again, just to be sure. This time, he went through it meticulously, but he still didn't find the crystal. His current situation was like being beaten for stealing something you planned to return, but then lost it on the way. Only in his case, he thought of returning it after being beaten, only to find out it was gone. Are you sure you don't have the crystal? Gray asked once again. He was still having doubts about what Void said. He couldn't be blamed though, since Void loved shiny things. I don't. If I knew it was this powerful, I wouldn't have taken it, Void said with remorse. Well, it's too late now, Gray said before increasing his speed. His senses weren't as sharp as Void's, but since Ethanth hasn't entered his range yet, it meant he was still some distance away. That's a valuable time for the duo to come up with a strategy before it will catch up to them. Gray continued running while thinking of something to do. Surprisingly, He asked himself if Klaus were here, what would he do? As soon as the thought came to his head, the only answer he could think of was, sacrifice the cat. He couldn't help but chuckle and take a glance at Void. Maybe I might try it, he thought to himself. It took Gray another 2 minutes to get off Th2E Mountain, running past the buildings he saw on his way. Another 5 minutes later, Gray started sensing Ethan's aura. It's getting closer, he thought. In another 2 minutes, Gray caught sight of Ethan's figure when he looked behind him. It wasn't really hard to miss the over 6 meters blue dragon in the sky, especially with its wings spread apart. He was currently running in an open field that seems to go downhill. Boom! An ice shard came from underneath Gray's feet, pushing him up. Luckily, Gray trained his physical body a lot, so he managed to quickly use the boost he got from the ice to leap forward. He landed on the ground before doing a roll because of the momentum. He instantly continued running as soon as he got up again. This time around, Ethan fired ice balls that exploded once they came in contact with anything. After the ice balls explode, they'll release ice that will freeze anything within a meter of them. Crap, crap, crap. Gray ran while dodging the ice balls that were falling from the sky. The chase went on like this for almost a minute before one of Gray's legs was unfortunately frozen, after being in the 1 meter range of the ice ball's freezing range. The ice froze his left leg from the foot to his thigh. Damn it. Come on, come on, come on, Gray urged as the ice on his legs slowly started melting, when he channeled his fire essence to his leg, but the problem was Ethan was getting closer to them. Yes, I'm free, Gray said after the ice melt completely from his leg. Bam! Ethan landed on the ground, blocking his path. Shit, I'm fucked. Gray immediately cursed when he turned around only to see Ethan in front of him. A scene quickly played out in his mind. It was the scene of him offering Void as a sacrifice, and Ethan letting him go. He quickly threw the thought to the back of his head, since he knew it was unrealistic. Mr. Dragon, just so you know, he was the one who stole your crystal. Gray pointed at Void, who was on his shoulder. You're selling me out, Void complained immediately. Good, we're even, Gray sneered. When did I ever sell you out? Void asked, feeling wrong. Oh, how about all the times you nearly caused my death because of your obsession? If we survive this, you're only allowed to steal what might put my life in danger. You know what? Tell me first if you want to steal something, Gray retorted angrily, releasing all the pent-up frustration he felt from this chase. Does that mean I can't steal the Emperor's crown? Void asked. He didn't try to talk back since he knew he was wrong. Did you even listen to a word I said? Don't steal what might cause my death. The Emperor's crown will not only cause my death, but it would also put those I know in danger. Gray yelled at him. Oh, I'm sorry about this though. It's just that, it was shiny. Void apologized. Why do you like shiny things? Gray couldn't help but ask. Honestly, I have no idea, replied Void after some time. Unfortunately for the duo, Ethan didn't have time to wait for them and attacked instantly. During the battle, Void had been slammed by Ethan's tail, was hit by an ice ball that exploded, freezing him in the process, and had been sent flying in every possible direction, even downwards. Chapter 203. I can't take this anymore. We need to escape, Void yelled after slamming into the ground for the 8th time. You can still go on, Gray sneered while blocking the advances of Ethan to give Void time to regain himself. No, I can't. Look at all the pits I've formed on the ground. Look, there's even one that draws for almost 2 meters. I'm not even close to half a meter in length, Void complained while showing Gray all the little craters his figure had made after he slammed into the ground. There is one that was particularly eye-catching since it drew over a distance of nearly 2 meters. It was from the time when Ethan's tail connected with Void, sending him crashing into the ground. Regardless of the fact that Void had been the one receiving most of the beatings, Gray hadn't been particularly lucky as well. Whenever Void was out of the picture, he had to face Ethan alone to try and cover for Void. It had been over 5 minutes since Ethan caught up with them, and they haven't even been able to strike him once. All their attacks had either been destroyed by Ethan's attacks or stopped by the ice sphere, which appears only when an attack gets close to it. Gray currently had 3 inscriptions set up which were frequently attacking, as well as his personal attacks. This was the only reason they were still alive. Distracting Ethan was the only thing Gray could currently do. Without Void Space Element, It was almost impossible for him to get past the ice sphere, since even when he manages to destroy it, Ethanth would be able to easily escape and create another one. He thought of using his physical strength, but he realized that getting closer to Ethanth would put him in more danger, so he decided against it. Also, after recalling how painful the tail strike he got from Ethanth was, he knew it was a fool's wish to think his physical strength would be on par with its or even stronger. Looks like I'll have to use that again, thought Gray. Without wasting time, he quickly started channeling water essence through his legs to different parts of the battlefield. He hoped to once again trap Ethanth before he and Void attacked with their strongest attacks. But he was left stunned when he realized once his water essence got within 2 meters of Ethanth, he would suddenly lose the link with it. It was like it was suddenly frozen. Gray tried again, and the result was just like the first time. He couldn't help but stare at the eyes of Ethanth, and from its eyes, he could tell it figured out what he wanted to do and stopped it. I'll have to use the fusion state for a little while then escape as quickly as possible, Gray thought. He was left with no option. He had to use the fusion state, so they could have an opportunity to escape. Hopefully, he might even get to hit Ethanth more. After all, they would be in the same stage. Void, buy me some time. I'm going to use that technique now, he said to Void, who was just managing to stand from the new pit he had formed on the battlefield. Ah, finally, Void exclaimed in delight before vanishing and attacking Ethanth the moment he came into sight again. Gray created an earth wall to block any possible attacks that might come from Ethanth, and focused on fusing his elemental beads. Since it wasn't the first time he was doing it, it was faster than before. His only concern was that he used the fusion state about a month or 2 ago, so he didn't know if it might be harmful to him or not. The elemental beads quickly fused, sending out a shockwave with Gray at the center. Soon, his stage increased from the 4th to the 5th stage, and then all the way to the 9th stage before it stopped. Boom. The intense activity quickly alerted Ethanth, who was having a good time beating Void up. It sensed the sudden spike in Gray's strength, and couldn't help but be stunned. How could the human improve by so much? It wondered. Ethanth knew of techniques that increase the strength of their users, but not by this much, especially given the plane Gray was on. Looks like the old man knew of this. Fine, things would become a little more interesting now, thought Ethanth. It had gotten a little tired of beating the duo up, but since Gray could actually improve his strength to this level, the battle wouldn't be boring anymore. It stomped on the ground, and from where its forelimb touched, the ground slowly started being covered in snow. In 10 seconds, it covered the area within a 30 meters radius. He quickly picked up speed and soon appeared before Ethanth. Being in the fusion state gave him more confidence to get close to Ethanth. He knew Ethanth's body was far stronger than his own, but he still wanted to try it out. He clenched his right hand into a fist and threw a punch at Ethanth. Ethanth retreated 3 meters back, and the ice sphere appeared once again, blocking Gray's punch. Crack! Cracks quickly spread across the ice sphere, but it managed to hold on. Gray didn't seem bothered as he quickly withdrew his hand to throw another punch with lightning speed. This time, his fist was covered in blue flames like a flaming glove. He got this idea from a technique he picked up during the first time he headed out of the Lunar Academy, lightning gloves. It was a technique he went on to regret picking, since he never really got the chance to use it. Boom. The already cracked ice sphere exploded and the flaming glove in Gray's hand shot from his hand, heading straight for Ethanth. Ethanth didn't have enough time to evade the attack, so it quickly improvised and its claw at the flaming fist. Boom. Ice and fire exploded out in 2 directions. Chapter 204. Gray stood calmly in the same spot while watching as Ethanth was able to block his attack. Void, he called. He couldn't even beat the Quasi Dragon when he was using the fusion state, so he didn't try to get COC Kai and fight against a real dragon with the same strength. Ethanth was far stronger than the Quasi Dragon was. He needed Void's help if they were going to be able to escape this nightmare. Ethanth roared excitedly after blocking that attack, and ice shards shot at Gray. Gray quickly used Ethanth's previous way of defending himself. He created a fire sphere around him that managed to make short work of the ice shards, not letting them come close to him. After blocking, he pointed at Ethanth as fireballs steadily shot out from the fire sphere, heading in its direction. Ethanth reciprocated by spitting out a stream of ice that destroyed most of the fireballs. but some still managed to hit him thanks to Void's space element. The trio fought back and forth with Ethanth unsurprisingly being the one who held the advantage. Within 1 minute, it had sent Gray flying a couple of times, and had also frozen some parts of his body. Likewise, in this 1 minute, Gray and Void had managed to hit it more than they had done since encountering it. After managing to dodge Ethanth's tail strike, Gray took to the sky, standing mid-air with his short hair fluttering in the wind. He was sweating from the intense 1 minute fight it just had with Ethanth. But he couldn't rest long since Ethanth attacked once again. Void, don't get close to it, Gray warned before a multicolored orb appeared in his hands. As soon as Void saw the orb, he instantly retreated since he knew how powerful it was. Ethanth, on the other hand, looked at the orb with curiosity, and shock could be seen present in its large eyes. How could he wield something this powerful? Ethanth was left puzzled. It didn't have time to think about it when it saw the multicolored orb coming its way at a frightening speed. It couldn't escape, so it quickly went into its defensive mode. The ice sphere, as well as the transparent ice scale-like armor that covered its body, appeared almost instantaneously. But even then, it felt they weren't enough. With that, it created an ice pillar that it sent at the orb, hoping to destroy it. Given the speed by which the orb was moving, it got close to him almost as soon as the ice pillar finished forming, so it didn't really move by much before it struck the orb. Boom! A huge explosion followed suit right after the orb made contact with the ice pillar. Gray, who was mid-air, felt Void appear on his shoulder. Let's go. Wait. Void stopped him. What? Throw one more. You know, just to be sure. Gray felt Void's idea wasn't bad. Another orb was soon thrown into the explosion, which was still increasing further. He made sure to aim it at the spot he previously saw Ethanth. The first explosion hadn't even reached its peak when the second one exploded after making contact with something. Boom! Gray quickly flew away from the scene, not waiting to see the outcome of the explosion. The only reason this battle felt a little easier than the one with the Quasi-Dragon was because of the huge space they had around them. Here, Ethanth couldn't corner them. Deep in the trial land, at a mountain peak, the old man was currently watching the battle between Ethanth and Gray, while Chris was busy studying the array before him. The old man watched on from how Ethanth was beating the duo to when Gray hid behind an earth wall. At first, he was puzzled by this, but it all made sense when he sensed Gray's energy increasing by the second. Oh, it's that? How come he can't enter instantaneously? He asked himself in a low voice. Chris looked at the man as he was muttering what sounded like gibberish to him, since he couldn't hear what he was saying properly. He shook his head and felt maybe, just maybe, the old man would go insane soon. Oh, he can use that now. Excellent. How smart, attacking once again to make sure the opponent is at the very least hurt. The old man muttered under his breath when Gray used the orb to attack Ethanth again. But he's quite cautious though, the old man said as he saw Gray escaping as soon as he used the orb the second time. As soon as Chris saw that the old man was gone, he instantly smiled in elation. That old man, he didn't know I've already figured out how to break this 30 minutes ago. Jam PH, he thought as he walked towards the array. Brown stared at him, but didn't have any reactions. Not that it didn't want to go out, but it knew it was a waste of time, since the old man would bring them back before they even get far. Chris knew this as well. He knew he couldn't escape, but he just wanted to break the array and examine this place further. On getting to the array, Chris calmly closed his eyes and used his spiritual sense to create an array that would break the weak link he had long found in the array. But the next moment, damn it, that cunning old man! Chris yelled in annoyance. The old man knew he had found the way to break the array, so he modified it a little. This, in turn, made Chris's previous effort be in vain. Fine, I give up, he thought depressingly, but that didn't stop him from studying the array though. He needed more knowledge on arrays, and the old man was giving it to him for free. Unfortunately, I can't teach them to my precious cook. Chapter 205. The old man soon appeared at the site of the battle. Of course, Gray and Void were long gone. He waved his hand and the smoke and dust in the area died down. The hill currently didn't have any semblance to what it looked like 10 minutes ago, before Gray and Ethanth started fighting. There was an over 10 meters deep crater at the spot where Ethanth was previously standing, and the surrounding looked like a place that just suffered from strong burns. Due to the ashes flying everywhere, technically, it has. In the crater, Ethanth could be seen sprawling on the ground. Its transparent ice armor scale was completely destroyed, most parts of its body were charred. Yet, none of its armor-like scales was removed. They were only charred, nothing else. When it noticed that the after effect of the explosion suddenly disappeared, it guessed it was the old man's doing. It got to its feet, staggered a little before finding its footing, shook its body, and leaped out of the crater. He's quite something. Ethanth praised before fixing its gaze in the direction Gray and Void escaped to. Well, it's normal since he inherited that, the old man said mysteriously. Not everyone knew of what was inside Gray's body, but he did. He knew it too well. That was why he wasn't shocked when he saw Gray displaying such power. If for anything he was shocked, it was not by the power Gray displayed, but because he felt compared to his student at this stage, Gray seemed to be lacking in strength. When that little brat was at this stage, he wouldn't have any problems with defeating Ethanth. The old man thought to himself, what did he inherit? Ethanth asked curiously. It's not something you should concern yourself about. Do you still plan on chasing after them? The old man asked. He could tell that Ethanth was fine. Given Ethanth's real strength, its physical defense wasn't something to laugh about. It was terrifying. Therefore, the old man knew other than the explosion shaking it up a little, it was perfectly fine. No, I've played enough for today. Ethanth rejected the idea. It still couldn't figure out why the old man was doing this. Okay? Maybe it has, after witnessing Gray's last attack. But, is there still a need to go after him? The old man had seen what he wanted anyway. Okay. But just a reminder, you'll see him again, and at that time, you wouldn't be able to beat him up. The old man said with a smile. He was bored. Chris had not really been entertaining. Why not watch Ethanth train the boy? He thought. Ethanth looked at the old man. It knew what the old man was implying. If you don't beat him now, you'll never have the chance again. But the question was, what good would beating a human boy do for it? Like the old man could read its mind, he said, when the time comes, this will be something you can brag about. Dragons are known to be prideful creatures, and Ethanth for one is also very prideful. But it had a weakness, it enjoyed bragging about things it had done or had acquired. That was one of the reasons it had so many treasures. Had Void not taken the crystal and woken it up, if the group looked inside the pond, they might have fainted from the sheer shock of the shiny things stacked inside. Something to brag about. Old man, are you sure you're not tricking me? Ethanth, who had previously lost interest, suddenly looked at the old man curiously. Why would it brag to others about beating up a human boy? Had it been a strong man, then it would have been truly interested. Because the boy would become someone even stronger than me, the old man said with a smile. Of course, he trusted Ethanth. Hence he knew he could tell him this much. He knew Ethanth wouldn't kill Gray, especially after hearing he would be stronger than him. Stronger than the old man. Doesn't that mean I have a chance to beat someone who might become the strongest person in the world in the future? That truly is something to brag about. Ethanth fell deep into thoughts. Take this as me asking you to train him. You could even say you trained the boy. The old man continued convincing him. The old man had already predicted Gray's destination when he saw the direction he was headed, so he knew Gray would be leaving here soon. He hoped to toughen him up more before he left this place. It might seem unfair to Gray, but this would help him when he gets out of this continent to see the world. He was currently too weak for the old man's liking. Okay, but you'd better not be lying. Ethanth agreed. Since the old man said he should take this as him asking him to train the boy, that meant the old man would reward him for his effort. It wasn't a bad deal, since he would also be able to brag about it in the future. The old man nodded before going back to his mountain peak. He wanted to see how far Chris had gone in breaking the modified array. Ethanth opened its mouth and spat out a cloud of snow. It gently walked through it, and its charred scales went back to their previous blue color. On getting to the mountain peak, the old man wasn't disappointed. Chris, just like the first time, had broken the array, but unlike the first time, he didn't leave the peak. Now, tell me, old man, what is this place? He asked. Ethanth gave chase and quickly caught up to Gray within 40 minutes. It immediately attacked, but unlike the other times, this time, he gave Gray a lot of openings, trying to see if he would be able to see them. The old man said it should train Gray, and that it will do, but it still beat him now and then. Gray was able to capitalize on some of the openings and attack Ethanth, but because he still wasn't experienced enough, he couldn't see them all. Chapter 206. Ethanth would occasionally let Gray attack him and escape, before giving chase after letting him rest for 20 minutes. Gray, on the other hand, didn't find it odd, since he felt Ethanth was probably chasing them, because it wanted its crystal back. Unknown to Gray, the continuous back and forth battle was gradually increasing the elemental essence in his body, since he had to refill it after each battle. At this rate, it wouldn't take long before he would break through to the 5th stage of the origin plane. Another 2 hours passed, but because of the battles, Gray was still over 2 hours away from his friends. He estimated that they would have gotten to the array by now, since it was over 3 hours already. Even if they hadn't gotten there, they wouldn't be far from it. He unfortunately couldn't use the fusion state anymore, so he had to run quickly. Another 1 hour went by, and he was attacked by Ethanth twice in that 1 hour. Compared to the first time Ethanth noticed, the humans seemed to have been able to notice more openings. Now, it wouldn't take up to 5 minutes before Gray would be able to send out an attack that would hold him down for some time, allowing the duo to escape. In comparison to Gray, Void was quicker in spotting openings, hence making the work easier for the duo. He was also the one who, for some reason, always gets beat up the most during each battle session. At a valley, some miles away from Gray's current position. It's a shame Peter died in here, he had been very loyal to me all this while. The young man leading the group said. He was none other than the 12th Prince of the Killen Empire. Amongst his entourage was Neil, as well as some of the surviving youths from the Royal Academy. Their group of 8 had been reduced to 4, but they all felt lucky since they weren't the ones who died. How are you so sure he died? There might be a chance he came out after we left, one of the 2 youths said. There's also that possibility. After all, we all thought Neil died as well. It was only after seeing him did we realize he came out first, the second youth said. The youth called Peter in question was the youth from the Starlight Academy, who Gray killed in that secret place. But there was no way for them to know about this, since none of them entered that place. Neil didn't say much and just continued walking silently. This almost 6 months he had spent here had taught him a lot of things about life. He had come face to face with death a couple of times, and on some occasions, he felt he would truly die. But help would always come from unexpected people he was confident that if he saw them in the same predicament, he wouldn't help them. He might even watch from afar as their enemies killed them. There was even that time when they were planning on dealing with Alan and Damien, who saved their lives just because they didn't come on time. He felt their way of thinking had been very childish. He had always thought the people from the Lunar Academy were the enemies. That was what the Royal Academy made him believe. But it seemed like he was wrong, totally wrong. Yet, why would the Royal Academy say they were the enemies if they truly weren't? Roar. A roar suddenly brought him out from his thoughts. What was that? The 12th Prince asked while staring behind them. I have no idea, but I don't think it's coming this way, the first youth who spoke previously said. The others nodded and continued on their previous pace. Neil, on the other hand, looked behind them more thoughtfully. He didn't know why, but there was a voice in his head telling him to run. Seeing the others were walking, he continued as well, but prepared himself to run regardless. At a forest, Gray was running quickly. He originally thought he was the type who enjoyed battling, but against Ethanth, he was dead tired. The fear of not knowing if he might be able to escape every time he fought against it made him not want to encounter it anymore. He felt grateful that he had been able to escape all this while, but he didn't know if he could escape the next time they meet. There was also the issue of his friends. They would be scared thinking he might have died since he hadn't arrived yet. There should be a valley there. It's faster than the normal route I planned on taking, Gray said, pointing towards his left. He had studied the map properly, and remembered most of the places to pass through when going back to where the array was located. Because he was in a hurry, he forgot about this valley. It was only now that he got close to it did he recall it. Without further delay, he turned around and headed straight for the valley, where the 12th Prince's group was walking with Ethanth hot on his tail. Gray soon got to the start of the valley. Looking behind him, he could visibly see Ethanth getting closer and closer. He charged straight into the valley, hoping to exit it before Ethan caught up. According to his estimate, taking this path would cut off at least 45 minutes from the time needed to get to the array. There are people up ahead. Void was the first to sense the group. Oh, they better not get in my way then. A cold glint flashed across his eyes. He was already angry from the chase. If these people tried to delay him, he didn't mind making them regret it, even at the cost of allowing Ethan to catch up to him. The group's figures soon appeared ahead of Gray. Neil, who was walking in the back of the group, looked back, and he was surprised when he saw someone running in their direction. He didn't see Ethan immediately, so he decided to take a proper look at the person. The others noticed he stopped and also took a look. Disdain appeared in their eyes even when they haven't seen who the person was. It didn't take long before Neil's expression changed. He immediately started backing away. "Run if you know what's good for you," he said before turning around. The 12th Prince caught his hand before he could run off. "Why are you running? Isn't that the boy from the Lunar Academy?" the 12th Prince asked. "Yes. Now let me go. Just a piece of advice. When next you see him running, you run for your life as well." Neil shook off the 12th Prince's hand and made a break for it. Gray, who was almost close to the group, was taken aback when he saw someone running, but he quickly recognized it was Neil. This was the third time he had encountered him while being chased. To think he would run away the moment he saw him running as well. Chapter 207. "Isn't that the guy we saw the last time you were being chased by those frogs and lizards?" Void looked at the running Neil. He recalled they had seen this guy before. The first time was when they were being chased by the lightning apes, and then by the frogs and lizards. Now, they've also encountered him when they were being chased again. How coincidental. "Yes, it's him. Why is he running as if I'm a calamity?" Gray asked, feeling a little shocked by Neil's reaction. "Well, had we not been connected, I'd have also run away from you. You're like a walking calamity," Void said mockingly. "And you're a calamity magnet," Gray retorted sharply. "Hello." He waved at the 12th Prince's group as he got close to them, hoping to dash past them. He didn't have time to stop and talk to them. Maybe he might speak to them after they leave this place. But for now, he doesn't even have time to change his damaged clothes, much less the time to talk to them. The last time they fought against Ethanth, it destroyed his clothes. He had some spare in his storage ring, but he couldn't delay, since he knew Ethanth would chase after him once again. "Ho, why are you running?" The 12th Prince tried to block Gray's way as he questioned, but to his surprise, Gray did a strange footwork, and he was already behind him. "Wait," he yelled. "I'd run if I were you," Gray said, but didn't even turn to look at them. At least he warned them. He didn't know why they didn't wisely run away, just like Neil. What? The 12th Prince and his group looked at Gray like he was crazy. They felt Neil was even crazier. Why the hell would he run away just because he saw someone running? But they got an answer a few seconds later. A chilling cold seemed to be coming from behind them that made them turn around. Roar. They were greeted by Ethan's roar that sent a chill down their spines. The 12th Prince shivered in fear and unconsciously took a step back. He wasn't the only one who got scared. The other two who were with him stood rooted to the ground. It was like their spirits left their bodies on seeing the ice blue dragon coming in their direction. Dragon, one of the youths stammered while raising his shivering hand pointing at Ethanth. Ethanth, who was originally chasing after Gray, was slightly taken aback when it heard this. It's not like it didn't see them at first, but it couldn't be bothered by these unimportant people. It opened its mouth, spraying streams of ice at them. The 12th Prince panicked. They couldn't run now, since Ethanth was already so close to them. He looked around, and it was like time stood still. It was at that time that he heard it clearly. The sound of running water. "Jump into the stream," he yelled as he dived into the water. They were very close to it, so jumping in before the ice would get to them was very doable. Plop. The other two heard this and followed as well. Getting wet was better than dying. Plop, plop. Two more sounds of people diving into the water rang out. Ethanth didn't bother to look at them and just continued on its way. Currently, there were two people running, and one dragon chasing behind them. Neil was at the front, but Gray was slowly catching up to him, while Ethanth was closing the gap between itself and Gray. Neil, who was at the front, couldn't help but look behind him. Looking behind him, he was stunned when he didn't see the 12th Prince nor the other two. His eyes trailed from where they were previously standing, and he caught sight of a head popping out of the flowing stream. Two more heads came out as well, and he quickly figured out what happened. He looked behind Gray, trying to figure out what was chasing him this time. He didn't see anything on the ground, so he curiously looked at the sky. That was when he got the biggest scare of his life. How does he always do it? Neil felt like his head wanted to fall off when he thought of this. He suddenly recalled when they first encountered Gray. At that time he thought there was nothing special about him. Then they encountered him again. At that time they were fighting what looked like a lost battle. Gray dashed out from the forest and acted strangely while running towards their enemies. He initially thought Gray was a traitor, but when he saw what was following behind him, he quickly understood the reason for his actions. Then he encountered him for the third time. In that particular encounter, he thought he would truly die. But just like the second encounter, Gray came dashing out of a forest, and behind him were multiple frogs and lizards. This was the fourth time he was encountering Gray, and he didn't dare to say there was nothing special about him anymore. Being able to always survive these chases had already made him special. In fact, if there was something higher than special, that was what Gray was. When he thought of his third encounter with Gray, he suddenly remembered the young lady who was swallowed by the frog. If only she told me what those apes did to her, he thought sadly. Sometimes, his curiosity made him have different thoughts about what the apes might have done to the young lady. Even after coming up with multiple scenarios, he still couldn't figure out what they did to her. If only she was alive, he would try to find her, so she would tell him what they did to her. Hi! Gray's voice brought him back from his thoughts. When he looked at his side, he saw that Gray had already caught up. Bye, Gray said as he dashed past him, not forgetting to flash him a smile. They were almost at the end of the valley, but Neil knew Ethan would catch up to him before he got to the end. I guess I have no choice. Plop. With that, Gray was the only human left on the valley who was on land. The rest were in the water. Thanks to him, Ethan didn't look at Neil. Since he got out of the way in time, there was no use in attacking him. Void looked at Neil in pity. He felt jumping in the water was just as much torture as getting beat up by Ethan. Gray was thinking about how they would deal with Ethan when Void suddenly asked a strange question. Did you know that the only time we were being chased and we didn't encounter that guy was when we were chased by those bunnies? Asked Void. Yeah, why are you bringing that up now? Whenever Gray heard about those bunnies, he felt like going back there and smashing that annoying bunny leader to pieces. Nothing, I just thought I should inform you, Void said. Well, I don't like recalling that stupid bunny. Chapter 208. Neil watched on as Gray and Ethan disappeared from sight. No wonder he always manages to escape. Neil suddenly realized something. Gray's speed was terrifying. He hadn't really thought of it before, but this time, on seeing Gray running for this short time, he was flabbergasted. How can he be so fast? He asked himself. He quickly got out of the water and stood in the same spot, waiting for the 12th prince and his companions to catch up. Why didn't you warn us? One of the two youths with the 12th prince snapped at him. Neil's expression turned dark and he almost attacked. He managed to keep himself in check before replying. First, you better remember your place. Secondly, I did warn you all. They all hang around in here, but other than the 12th prince, his status was far above theirs. They were just students who went to the Royal Academy. He, on the other hand, was royalty. You weren't clear enough. The 12th prince chipped in when he realized that the others couldn't contend with Neil given their status. He was the one who instigated them to say this. He felt annoyed thinking of the fact that he had to jump into the water just to avoid Ethan's attack, so he wanted to take it out on Neil. I told you to run. It's none of my business if you decide to run or not. Or do you expect to wait and explain everything to you and put myself in danger? Neil didn't back down even when the person he was speaking to was the 12th prince. He wasn't wrong, so why would he allow him to take out his frustration on him, just because he was angry? Unlike the others, he wasn't afraid of him. It wasn't like he would be the next emperor. The 12th prince narrowed his eyes into a slit, then he let out a small chuckle and tapped Neil on the shoulder. What academy was that brat from again? He asked. Lunar Academy. The two youths answered in unison. Lunar Academy again. Isn't that the academy those two morons were from as well? The 12th prince looked at the duo again. They quickly understood who he was talking about and nodded. He was speaking about Alan and Damien. Good, it's nice we won't get to go to different places to settle our scores. We'll visit the academy later on. The 12th prince let go of Neil before he continued walking. But I'm quite curious. What did he take that made a dragon chase after him? It must be a great treasure since it's from a dragon, he said with greed evident in his face. For a mighty dragon to chase after him and not even bother with them meant that he took the dragon's treasure. Everyone knew how valuable things belonging to dragons were. If he could acquire it, maybe his strength would skyrocket. At that time, he wouldn't be scared of his brother. If he's strong enough, he would just kill whoever becomes the emperor and take over. He had been very ambitious since birth, and maybe he might just have his way soon. It must be something valuable, one of the youths said. Yes, extremely valuable. The other one nodded. The 12th prince squatted down to touch the snow that fell after Ethanth flew past. I thought as much, let's follow them. Thanks to the dragon, we have a trail. Neil looked at the 12th prince but didn't say much. Yes, he was curious about what Grey might have done to the apes, frogs and lizards, and now a dragon as well, but he never once thought of obtaining it. He followed along as the group followed the trail Ethanth left on the way, but he had other plans. At a compound, a 3-story building could be seen in the compound. Some parts of it had been destroyed. If one looks closer, one would realize that some of the destructions seemed to happen not too long ago. Boom. A human figure shot of the highest floor in the building. Behind him was ice shards heading straight at him. The figure was Grey, of course. After fleeing from the valley, he passed through a forest before Ethanth caught up with him at this compound. He had been fighting with him since, and he had just been flung from the other side of the building, passing through the windows, as well as the almost destroyed walls that broke the moment his body came in contact with them. The walls couldn't stop his figure as he went from one side of the building to the other. Void, don't let it come this way, Grey said as he did a flip mid-air while trying to use the wind element to stabilize himself before crashing into the ground. But since he controlled himself, he landed on his foot and drew a few meters before stopping. As soon as he stopped, he dodged to his left, and the ice shards struck the ground where he was previously standing. Grey breathed out a sigh of relief. Quote, "Phew, that was close. How are things over there?" he asked Void as he dashed into the building. "Not good. I think this thing hates me." Void almost wanted to cry. Whenever Grey was not in the scene, then Ethanth would beat up him so much, but would always make sure not to send him flying. That way, it could beat him some more. "I'm on my way, try not to die," Grey advised. He quickly climbed up the stairs, appearing on the top floor before long. Ethanth didn't fly down this time, it stayed mid-air. Since Grey couldn't fly, the only way he could easily attack it was when he was on high ground. The last time he was flung through the window was when he was accidentally caught by Ethanth's tail. Grey was left dumbstruck when he saw the suffering Void was going through. "You're right about that, it truly does hate you." Luckily, Grey came in time. "Maybe it knows you're the one who stole its crystal," Grey mocked. "It's not funny, help me distract it while I free myself," Void said angrily. He had the fire element so he could free himself. But before he could even do it previously, Ethanth had frozen him again. What was more annoying was the fact that he couldn't escape with the space element. Grey snickered as he dashed towards Ethanth. Just then, he flicked his wrist. After doing that action, he attacked Ethanth using his fire element. Void, who was only thinking of escaping, didn't notice Grey's action. An ice whip suddenly appeared above his small butt and smacked it. Ethanth caught sight of this, and it almost burst into laughter. "I knew the human wanted me to beat him up," it thought. Void screamed in pain when the whip lashed him. Chapter 209. That should teach him a lesson. Grey snickered inside, but acted like he knew nothing about what just happened. "Void, why are you screaming?" he asked with concern. "That bastard whipped my butt. Let's kill it," Void said in pain. He hadn't even been able to free himself yet he was attacked again. Now he regretted stealing the crystal all the more. If he could go back in time, he would not have taken it. Without any further delay, he quickly thawed the ice that was restraining his limbs, before Ethanth would whip his butt again. As soon as he freed himself, he stood on his 2 hind legs and rubbed his butt with his forelimbs, like a human would do if they were whipped in the butt. "We should escape first, after that we'll think of what to do next." Which I presume is running, again. Grey didn't even have the thought of killing Ethanth. When he was previously using the fusion state, he couldn't defeat it, much less now that he couldn't use it anymore. Besides, why would he want to kill Ethan for something he did? It's because you weren't the one lashed. That's why you're saying this. Void's voice was in between crying and speaking normally. Gray felt Void was just a question away from actually crying, and he opted not to ask it for now. Once they've escaped, then he'll get on Void's nerves. Stop acting like a scaredy cat and fight back. Don't you want to get your revenge? He urged him to attack. Void yelled in anger before attacking with the darkness element. He made a cloud of darkness and sent it Ethan's way. He was incensed. How dare Ethan whip his butt? It was unforgivable. Boom. Bang. No, I'll get revenge later. Let's find a way to escape first. After getting hit, Void quickly discarded the thought of revenge. Who was he kidding? There was no way for the duo to go toe-to-toe with Ethan, much less beating it. Yet, he was thinking of killing it. How stupid of him. Gray chuckled and attacked as well. He wanted to find an opportunity to take down Ethan, then run away. He was already close to the array, about 1 hour 30 minutes or so. He hoped that Ethan wouldn't be able to catch up with him before he gets there. Boom. His fireball clashed with Ethan's ice ball, sending heat and chill in 2 directions. Gray immediately used his inscriptions to attack before the after effects of the explosion. When the 2 attacks collided, died down. Bam, bam. The 2 inscriptions attacks connected with Ethan, pushing it down a little. Gray saw this as an opportunity, and quickly jumped from the top of the building, making an earth glove around his hand. He prepared his right hand, and as soon as he got close to the descending Ethan, he struck a terrifying blow on its back. Boom. Bang. Ethan's body crashed into the ground, making a pit in it. Gray, on the other hand, was boosted upwards from the explosion he caused after his fist connected. He quickly landed on the top of the building once again before turning around to flee. Void. What are you doing? Gray was left speechless when he saw Void going close to the end of the building, looking at the pit Ethan made when it crashed into the ground. A dark orb formed just above his head that he sent straight into the pit. He didn't even allow it to travel at its usual speed, as he moved it into the pit directly, using the space element. Bam. Roar. Ethan's roar of pain was heard from the pit. When it previously slammed into the ground, it didn't really feel any pain, but the corrosive ability of the darkness element always finds a way to cause it harm. This was one of the other reasons it always beats Void up more compared to Gray. That little cat. Just you wait for the next time I catch up to you. It hissed in pain. After hearing the roar, Void quickly withdrew his head from the edge of the building before saying, "Quickly, let's go, before it recovers." Without being told, Void knew Ethan's hatred for him just increased to a new height. It's just that he wouldn't be at rest if he didn't get revenge. Now that the opportunity presented itself, of course, he was going to use it. Gray looked at him in pity. Pray it doesn't catch up before we get to the array. Even Gray wasn't optimistic about their chances of not encountering Ethan again. After all, there was still around 1 hour 30 minutes before they got there. Given how things had been going all this while, it might catch up to them at least once, before they got to the array. The duo quickly ran out of the compound, disappearing into the forest on the right. 15 minutes after Gray and Void left, a group of 4 walked into the compound, heading to the side of the building where Ethan crashed. The group comprised of the 12th Prince, Neil, and the 2 other youths. They had been tracking Gray and Ethan after they got out of the water. Yet even when Gray and Ethan spent so much time fighting here, they still weren't able to catch up. They're gone. The 12th Prince narrowed his eyes as he examined the compound. The building was originally damaged, but he quickly noticed the new parts of it that were broken. What if the boy is hiding in the building? One of the 2 youths said. They shouldn't be far. They definitely fought here not too long ago. The 12th Prince said and looked at the pit Ethan made when it crashed. Is he that strong to cause this? I'll have to see for myself, he thought before following the trail once again. The group headed to the forest on the left. Gray headed to the right, but since Ethan usually gives him some time to rest, it went to the left to also rest a little. The 12th Prince nor anyone in their group knew of this, hence they followed Ethan, thinking it was still pursuing after Gray. Chapter 210. While the group was walking further, Neil was thinking about the state of the compound when they got there. The pit he saw on the ground was obviously made by the dragon, so it meant Gray was able to hit it. He didn't just hit it, but he hit it fiercely. If the dragon could make such a deep crater from his attack, will any of us be able to survive it? This was the question he was asking himself over and over again. From what the 12th prince previously said, it wasn't hard to know his reason for following behind them. He wanted to collect the treasure by force. Wait, how could I be so foolish to follow them? If we encounter the dragon or that guy and the prince wants to collect the treasure, neither of them would listen to my explanation. They would kill me instantly. Neil thought in fear. The others seemed to have been blinded by greed, so they forgot about the fact that they couldn't fight against the dragon. If Gray was capable enough to fight it to that extent, doesn't that mean that Gray was almost as strong as the dragon? How could the 12th prince dare to think of forcefully taking something from someone as strong as that? Neil immediately decided to warn them. Don't you think this is a bad idea? Huh? The 12th prince stopped to look at him. You know, trying to steal the treasure from that guy. Neil explained. What are you even saying? If you don't want to come along, then beat it. The 12th prince said while waving his hand as if Neil was an annoying fly. Neil stopped and wanted to leave, but then he thought about the fact that the 12th prince was his cousin. He shouldn't just let him walk towards his doom, without trying to convince him. Think about it. Didn't you see the outcome of their battle? If that guy could fight against the dragon to that extent, it means we can't take him on. He continued convincing the 12th prince. But this time, the 12th prince didn't even bother to spare him a glance. How could Neil say he should forget about a treasure that belongs to a dragon? He must be sick in the head if he would let such an opportunity slip by. Neil got a little annoyed when the 12th prince ignored him. He decided to warn him for the last time. If he didn't listen to him, then it wouldn't be his fault if anything happened to them. He was once again ignored by the 12th prince. Fine, I'm leaving then. Don't say I didn't warn you. Neil immediately stopped following the group and changed his direction. He didn't want to be near them nor the dragon. The 12th prince and the others continued running for another 15 minutes, slowly getting closer to where Eatonth was resting. Deep in the forest, Eatonth was resting beside a tree with its eyes shut. Its shut eyes suddenly snapped open, and they looked ahead of it a little surprised. Why would these little brats follow me? It thought as soon as it sensed the 12th prince and his group. It didn't go too far from where it fought against Gray, but given the speed of the 12th prince and his group, it looked far. It continued monitoring them and soon quickly figured out something. Eatonth had lived for a long time, so it knew greed whenever it senses it. Even though the 12th prince hadn't appeared in front of it, it had already noticed the greed in his eyes. Heh, looks like I'll kill someone after all, Eatonth thought. Compared to Gray and Void, it did not pity anyone else. Okay, it might not really have much of a pity for Void, but it wouldn't kill him, unlike these morons who were running to their death. It shut its eyes waiting for them. Another 1 minute passed before the 12th prince and his group got to where Eatonth was lying. Look, it's the dragon. Do you think it's injured? One of the youths whispered on seeing that Eatonth had its eyes shut. Maybe, let's go closer. It would be best if it's injured, we could kill it then. A dragon's heart is a supreme treasure, the 12th prince said. He felt like he had hit the jackpot, and even started thanking Gray for wounding the dragon. Now, all they had to do was finish the dragon, and they would be able to acquire its heart. When I see that boy, I'll thank him for this gift. Before I take the treasure he stole from the dragon. He thought a little excited by the prospect of obtaining the dragon's heart. Since Eatonth was an ice dragon, its heart would be more beneficial to a water elementalist, but the 12th prince didn't care. The little benefit he could get from this would make his plane skyrocket. He might even get the chance of reaching the Sage Plane within 5 years. That was a plane he didn't even think he might reach before his life runs out. There were a lot of people who had been stopped in the Overlord Plane for so long, yet none of them could find a way to break through. He had heard of a rumor in the palace about there being a Sage Plane elementalist in the palace, but he couldn't confirm it. The 12th prince and his group edged closer to Eatonth. Their hearts were beating wildly just thinking about what they were about to do. As soon as they got within 5 meters of Eatonth, they attacked. The moment they released their attacks, Eatonth, who previously had its eyes shut, opened them and stared at the group with curiosity. It didn't even try to dodge the attacks. Its transparent armor appeared on its body and easily blocked their attacks. In the group, the 12th prince was the only one who had managed to get to the 3rd stage of the origin plane. The other 2 were just in the 2nd stage. And unlike Gray, they didn't even have attack power that was stronger than their stages. After blocking their attacks, It stood up and looked at them with its large eyes. There was a hint of playfulness in them. The previously silent forest turned noisy by the screams of terror from the 12th prince and his companions. Chapter 211. The 12th prince and his companions managed to keep their lives for about 10 minutes or so, but as soon as one of them was killed, it didn't take long before Eatonth killed the 12th prince's last companion. Regret washed over the face of the 12th prince when he watched the last of his companions die. He quickly tried to escape, going as far as using the secret technique he was given in the palace, in case he met any danger. Unfortunately, compared to Eatonth, even when he used a secret technique, he still wasn't fast enough. Please don't kill me. I can be your slave. No, I'm a prince. I can get you anything you want. I'll become the next emperor so I'm very wealthy. The 12th prince initially thought of becoming a slave, but he quickly changed his mind, thinking he could trick Eatonth into letting him go. Eatonth looked at him like he was looking at a fool. Seeing that there was no reaction from Eatonth, the 12th prince started thinking once again, how about you keep me, then find someone to send a message to my father, the emperor. He will comply with whatever demands you make. Eatonth studied the 12th prince again, and felt like someone so stupid shouldn't have been born. How could someone who didn't even have a storage ring say he was wealthy? It moved closer to the 12th prince, who was still speaking of his wealth, opened its mouth, and let out a breath of icy wind. After the icy wind passed the 12th prince, an ice statue was what appeared in place of the 12th prince. Crack! Lines ran across the statue from the head to the toe, before the statue crumbled down. No. Eatonth replied to what the 12th prince was saying after killing him. The kid seems to be heading out of this place. I'll attack him one more time before letting him go. It shook its body before taking to the air. In an open field, Gray was currently running, hoping to get to where the array was before Eatonth located them. He did not know the 12th prince stupidly following behind him, or getting killed in the process. Even if he did, he wouldn't care. Is it coming yet? He asked Void, who was still grumpy from when his BUTT was lashed. No, and it better not come, Void said angrily. Or else. I'll beat you'll see what I'll do to it when it comes. Gray chuckled but refrained from speaking any further. He should at least allow Void to fantasize about something he was unable to do. It had been just over 1 hour since he escaped from Eatonth, and he estimated he would get to the array within 30 minutes or so. After leaving this place, I'll have to go back to Red City. I need to find Mom, thought Gray. He was already in the Origin Plane, and other than those in the Overlord Plane, he could fight against anyone in the Origin Plane, with Void's help, of course, or the Fusion State. He could move freely without really having to worry for himself. It's been so long I saw Dad, will he be able to recognize me? He instantly thought of his father. His mother said she was going over to meet his father, which meant that he was still very much alive. It had been almost 10 years since he last saw his father, and he couldn't help but think how it would feel like seeing him. The truth was, he didn't really know how he felt towards him. He had been with his mother for so long that he sometimes forgets his father is still alive. Not just that, but he felt he might not recognize him if he sees him again. After going to the academy, other than his mother, he rarely thinks of his father. If not for the fact that his mother said she was going to meet him, he wouldn't be too bothered about him. What would Void's parents be like? I wonder if they have the same obsession as he has. Gray threw a glance at Void, who was sitting on his shoulder. He almost wanted to ask, but he felt it didn't sound right, because when he found Void, he was still in an egg. So those memories of yours, how do you get them? Asked Gray. Void usually behaves weirdly sometimes. There are also times when he knows things that he hadn't seen before. There had to be something that made him remember all these things. I don't know, I just do. There are some things I see and I just recall things about them. It's like I've always known about them, Void replied after thinking for a while. Strange. Are you sure you're not something else? Gray picked Void up and started scrutinizing him just like he did the first time he saw him. Honestly, I don't know, answered Void. Gray looked at Void for some time before continuing their journey. It must be, though, being surrounded by so many mysteries. Even his birth was a mystery. A cat hatching out of an egg. Not just that, but he needed to absorb blood essence before he could hatch. He had a rare element. Now, he could recall things. Don't worry, we'll find out, eventually. Gray consoled Void on their way. I know, you don't need to doubt me. I'll never do anything to harm you, Void said. He could tell there was a little doubt in Gray's voice. He wasn't really surprised though, since even he didn't know what to believe about himself. Hatching out of an egg and recalling things he knew nothing about was not easy for someone to accept. Seriously? Gray asked with a weird expression. Void had put him in danger multiple times, so hearing this was very strange. You know what I mean, Void said lightly while wearing an awkward smile. He could tell what Gray was thinking. Gray shook his head with a soft smile. Of course he knew what Void meant. It was just that Void putting it that way didn't sound right, given their current situation. Chapter 212. 5 minutes later. It's here, Void said as soon as he sensed Ethanth. Sigh, let's get this done with. If we can escape from it this time, then we're free, said Gray. They were still in the open field. Just ahead was a forest. After going through this forest they would appear before the hill that leads to the mountain where they first appeared. Why don't we fight against it here? Void suggested. I feel fighting against it in the forest would be better. Gray voiced his opinion. No, it would catch up as soon as we get into the forest. We should take this time to prepare, Void urged. Okay. Gray nodded, thinking the idea wasn't bad. Shit. I'm running out of essence stones, Gray complained after putting the last stone on the array. He got the stones from Quinn's group, but rarely used them in cultivating. Rather, he always used them whenever he was making arrays, since he couldn't make a strong array without them. Ethanth soon came in sight, and Void was staring at Gray's hand with big round eyes. He still couldn't figure out how Gray always does this thing. Gray immediately started creating the fusion orb. When Ethanth got within the range of his senses, he planned to use it during their first barrage of assault. Calculating the time, he felt he would be able to form it before Ethanth arrives. And luckily for him, Ethanth came just in time. To Gray's greatest surprise, this time though, he managed to keep the orb under control for almost 10 seconds. That's a new record, he thought excitedly before noticing the orb was losing control after just getting to the 10 seconds mark. But that was all he needed, since Ethanth had already gotten close to them. Void was the first to attack, disappearing from Gray's shoulder and appearing some distance away from Ethanth. He stayed mid-air before sending out fire and darkness element attacks. This was part of the plan they had. He would distract it for the first second or so, to give Gray time to attack properly. After all, Ethanth wouldn't just stand there and allow the orb to hit it. Roar! Void quickly vanished once again before appearing behind it. He decided to follow in its footstep, and also formed a claw made of the darkness element. Ethanth turned around to block it. It couldn't rely on its ice sphere against this, since it would be able to corrode it. Gray threw the orb the moment Ethanth turned around. He not only attacked with the orb but the 3 inscriptions, as well as the attacking array. The array was of the fire element as well as the inscriptions. Void! Gray yelled. But to his surprise, Void was already on his shoulder. The duo retreated since Ethanth was only 15 meters away. If the orb exploded and they were caught up by the blast, even though they might not die, it would definitely hurt them. Boom! Being forced to block Void's attack, before defending against the attacks from the inscriptions, Ethanth was unable to evade the orb. He hated it a lot. This was the second time he was going to be blasted by it, and to be honest, he didn't like it. Gray looked at the explosion as he retreated further. He recalled that was able to stop Ethanth the last time. Haha, this time it didn't even touch us, Void said happily. For the first time since they were fighting against Ethanth, they managed to quickly put it down. They couldn't even call this a battle. It ended too quickly. Yeah, preparing wasn't really that bad. Gray nodded. Had they not prepared, then they would have had to go through a long though battle before they would be able to strike it. The duo had always made sure that whenever they got the opportunity to attack it, they gave it their strongest attacks. They ran into the forest, heading for the hill. Gray couldn't wait to leave this place. He had been running all this time. At least once he leaves here, he would finally be able to rest. 20 minutes later, Gray appeared at the foot of the hill that led to the mountain. He saw the purple bamboo tree patch that was on the hillside. It still had the faint mist that wreathed around it, while giving one an ethereal feeling of a unique realm. What are you standing here for? Have you forgotten what's behind us? Void's yell woke Gray from his state of reverie, and he quickly started ascending the hill. He got here at least 10 minutes faster than the time he estimated. The reason for this was because Roar, Gray and Void looked behind them, and he tried to push his speed further. Unfortunately, he was already at his limit. At the peak of the mountain, 3 youths could be seen sitting idly close to an array. They were Klaus, Alice, and Reynolds. They stood up simultaneously when they heard Ethan's roar. This was the second time they were hearing it today, so they recognized it. "Gray's almost here," Reynolds said. "We should move closer to the array," Klaus said, moving a little bit closer to the array, but not entering it. "If he places his foot on it, then it would suck him in, transporting him outside the trial land." He didn't know if he could enter again after leaving, so he didn't dare to try it. It took Gray almost 3 minutes to get to the peak of the mountain, and Ethan was already very close to him. If not for the fact that Gray never stopped running even when Ethan attacked, they would have already been fighting. "What are you guys standing there for? Get in," Gray yelled as soon as he saw the others. Chapter 213. Huh! The trio exclaimed simultaneously when they heard Gray. As soon as Gray appeared, Ethan's figure soon came into view. Crap. It truly chased him all the way here. Klaus was the first to react. He quickly stretched out both his hands, holding onto Reynolds and Alice's arms respectively. He dragged them closer to him as he stepped into the array. He recalled when Gray said the dragon might actually be behind him as he was coming here, but he never thought it would happen. After stepping into the array, Klaus, Reynolds, and Alice were quickly enveloped by light before vanishing. Ethan sent an ice ball in Gray's direction. "Incoming." Void alerted Gray of the ice ball. "You take care of it," Gray said, not changing his direction. Void had been the one changing the direction of some of Ethan's attacks. Since they were already this close, Gray saw no reason to dodge to the side. Ethan might even catch up with them if he does so. "I can't," replied Void. "Why?" "I'm out of space essence. I haven't had much time to refill before each battle. I don't think what's left will be enough to transport the ice ball. It would be bad for us if it doesn't," explained Void. Gray's absorption speed was faster than his, so unlike Gray, who would use about 1 hour or so to fill up his essence reserve, he needed nearly double the time. He was very reliant on his space element, so it's understandable why even after resting for 30 minutes, it couldn't keep up with his consumption. "Fine, but attack it. I don't think I can fight against it anymore," said Gray. Gray appeared almost 7 meters to the right. The moment he appeared, he continued running since he didn't dare to waste any more time. "Luckily, I'm very fast," Gray thought as he looked behind him. To his surprise, Ethan didn't continue chasing after him when he got close to the array. Ethan didn't have any problems with deflecting Void's fireball. It stopped in place after deflecting the attack and looked at Gray as he was about to step into the array. "Looks like it can't leave this place. No wonder it tried so hard to stop me when I started ascending the mountain." On seeing Ethan's reaction, Gray thought it stopped because it couldn't leave this place. He felt it was just like the Quaside dragon who couldn't leave that underground lab, so it tried to do everything it could to stop him. "Goodbye, Mr. Miss." Gray paused since he didn't know how to address Ethan. He had no idea if it was male or female. "What are you doing?" Void asked, looking at Gray strangely. He felt they should have already left by now, yet Gray was trying to tell Ethan goodbye. Was he crazy? "I'm trying to say goodbye." "Oh, do you know if it's a Mr. or a Miss?" Gray asked enthusiastically. "Now I see why he's friends with those two." Void shook his head. He had always thought compared to Klaus and Reynolds, Gray was relatively more serious. But on seeing what he was currently about to do, he felt they were the same people. Presently, he wouldn't be surprised if Gray truly used the healing tonic he got from the blooming vipers to cook. "Why don't you ask it? Or even better, check," Void said sarcastically. "Forget it. It's not like knowing its gender matters," said Gray. "Goodbye, dragon. I'll truly miss you." Just like ever. Roar. Ethan, who just wanted to make sure Gray left before it went back to its cave, roared angrily. It was currently about 15 meters away from where Gray was standing. Yet, saliva and snot still came out of its mouth and headed straight for Gray. It wanted to attack, but it recalled that Gray would be able to easily dodge it. But with this, Gray would definitely want to leave. Crap. Gross. Gray immediately stepped into the array, hoping to disappear before the yellowish substance that came out of Ethan's mouth got to him. He didn't know if it was an attack or not, but just from how it looked, he didn't want it anywhere near himself. He was quickly enveloped by a white light before disappearing. Just as he was disappearing, the yellowish substance got to the place. Splat! It touched the ground with Gray nowhere to be seen. But looking closer, Ethan noticed there was a part of the substance that was missing. Because of the trajectory, the substance was supposed to form a complete circle, since it missed Gray. Yet, a chunk from that circle was missing, at least 1/3 of it. Ethan burst into laughter when it realized what happened. It originally didn't expect it to touch Gray, so on seeing that it did, it was amusing as well as satisfying. Haha, I have something else to brag about. I spat on him. Haha. Ethan was laughing happily as it took to the air. The old man appeared above him with a wry smile. He didn't know Gray's personality, so seeing him standing there seemingly wanting to say goodbye to Ethan stunned him. He was further shocked when he saw Ethan spraying saliva and snot in his direction. Why did you do that? He asked with a curious expression. Haha, I didn't really plan for it to go this way, but I'm glad it did. Haha. Ethan didn't answer his question, rather, he continued laughing joyfully. The old man couldn't understand the joy it was currently feeling. In the future, it wouldn't only say it beat up Gray, it would also say it sprayed saliva and snot on him. Its friends would be envious. Well, that was all on the premise that Gray turns out to be stronger than the old man in the future. If not, it'll never speak of it. It's not like it lost anything anyway. Everything that Gray took was nothing much compared to its wealth. That doesn't answer my question, the old man said calmly. I just wanted him to go so I could go back to my cave. Ethan said while chuckling. It still found the whole scenario very hilarious. I saw what you did though, the old man said with a smile. It's just a small amount of water, it's nothing much, Ethan said nonchalantly. The old man looked at him with a strange smile. Heh, even though this guy likes bragging, he didn't forget to help Gray out, he thought. When Ethan opened its mouth to roar, a string of ice-cold water shot straight at Gray. It was faster than the yellowish substance, and Gray didn't even sense it before it entered into his body. The water was from the pond in Ethan's cave, ? It's very beneficial to ice dragons. In the case of humans, it increases a water elementalist's ice ability. Ethan always carries some with it. It originally didn't want to give some to Gray, because from the first time they fought, Gray only used the fire, lightning, earth, and wind elements. It was when Gray first used the water element to trap it, that it started getting the thought. It finally decided to give him some as a parting gift when it saw Gray's ice ability when Gray created an ice whip. Since Ethan was an ice dragon, it naturally favored ice in regards to humans, water elementalists. It noticed compared to some of the humans it had seen, Gray's ice ability was lacking, so it decided to help him out. But given Gray's current abilities, there was no way he would know it helped it. Ethan didn't do it to gain his favor anyway. It did it because it wanted to. My crystal, Ethan said, not forgetting what made it do all this in the first place. I thought you've forgotten about it. The old man laughed before making the crystal appear before him. He waved his hand and the crystal went back to Ethan. With this crystal, Ethan's ice power is almost double. This meant that had it been with this crystal while fighting against them, they wouldn't stand a chance. The crystal floated before Ethan for 2 seconds, before going back to its head. As soon as it came close, it embedded itself into it once more. I'll be going back now, old man. Call me when you need me, Ethan said before flying off. The old man stood in the sky for a while before looking in the direction of the array. Sigh, hopefully he grows in time, he muttered before vanishing. Ha ha. What a way to leave this place. Void laughed on seeing the sight of Gray after he appeared on the other side of the array. Chapter 214. Outside the trial land. Before Gray and his friends came out, some guards could be seen on each camp, carefully patrolling the area. There was the threat of them being attacked by magical beasts. After all, they were at the borders of the magical beasts forest, so they had to make sure the place was safe. Each empire left a group in the camps to help protect the youngsters. Once they came out of the array, there was no way to predict when they would come out, so there was always someone watching it constantly. Once anyone exits the array, there is a group that would immediately transport the person back to the empire. Given the conflict between the empires, especially the Killen and Azure empires, it wasn't safe for the youths to stay there. Over the past 10 days, at least 20 youths had already exited the trial land, and they were all in the origin plane. Although not even 1/10 of the people who went in had come out, the guards from their respective empires were all happy seeing the increase in the strength of the youths. At the Killen's empire camp, some guards could be seen discussing, "Sigh, only 2 from our empire have exited the array so far. Could it be that most of them are dead?" "I don't think so. Maybe they are trying to further increase their strengths during these last few days." "Yeah, the Azure Empire are just like us, only having 3 people coming out." HMPH. Those stupid fools, to think they would try to assassinate one of our geniuses. If not for the fact that we still have to wait, I'd have killed someone already. The guards discussed while glancing at the Azure Empire's camp. 3 days back, the second person from the Killen Empire exited the trial land. He was surprisingly in the 5th stage of the origin plane. As soon as the guards from the Azure Empire noticed this, he immediately attacked, trying to kill him. Luckily, the guards from the Killen Empire were quick to react, so they managed to block it in time, without harming the young lady who just exited the trial land. When they wanted to attack, the guard from the Azure Empire said he saw a magical beast, that was why he attacked. Since if both empires' guards went into an all-out battle, it would benefit the other 2 empires. The leader of the Killen Empire's guards told them to keep calm, for now. Besides, they were also given the order to kill any genius above the 4th stage of the origin plane. That was from any of the other empires. But they didn't dare to do it so blatantly. The guards from each empire were all around the 6th and 8th stage of the origin plane. Only the leader of the guards were in the 9th stage of the origin plane. But hidden within each camp was an overlord plane expert. They were there in case of any mishaps. While the guards were still discussing, the array lit up. "Someone is coming out." The guards from each camp rushed out of their camps before the light would die down, so they could see which empire's genius came out of the trial land. The lights soon died down, and Alice, Klaus, and Reynolds came into view. The guards from the Killen Empire who were closer to the array quickly surrounded the trio. The guards coming from the camps still hadn't gotten there yet, so these guards had to protect them. It didn't take up to 2 seconds before the other guards got to where the array was. Since the guards from the Killen Empire had already come out in full force, the Azure Empire's guards didn't try anything funny. Almost all the guards from the Killen Empire surrounded the trio as soon as they got there. Although they were only in the 3rd stage, the guards didn't want to risk it. After all, only 2 of their empire's geniuses have previously exited the trial land. Quickly, before they tried to attack, the leader of the guards said as soon as he got there, not forgetting to glare at the group from the Azure Empire. Before Klaus and the others could say anything, the guards pushed them away from the array towards their camps. Most of the guards from the Killen Empire followed behind the trio, so they could ensure their safety. It wasn't like anyone would come out instantly, right? Klaus tried explaining, but he was cut short. "Talk after we go in. These people wouldn't mind fighting us just for the chance to kill you 3. The leader of the guards said. "I know, Klaus tried speaking again, but he was once again interrupted. "Please, wait till we enter the camp," the leader said, but continued taking them to the camp. Klaus, Alice, and Reynolds felt like they were prisoners who were being taken to the dungeons. They wanted to speak, but the leader of the guards would always interrupt them. They immediately lost their patience. The leader of the guards said they might be attacked by the guards from the other empires. Doesn't that mean that when Gray comes out, he would also be attacked? Klaus looked back and realized only 2 guards were close to the array, and they were even at the 6th stage of the origin plane, while the other empire's guards were still there. Some haven't even started going back to their camps yet. FUCK this. Now you listen to me. My friend will be coming out soon, and since you're saying those guards would attack us, the chances of him being attacked is higher, since he's far stronger than us. Klaus cursed out in anger. He also said some more vulgar words. That made the guards' expressions changed. Some were angry, while the leader on the other hand nearly fainted. "Why didn't you say so earlier?" the leader of the guards asked. "Did you give me the chance of speaking?" Klaus asked, looking at him angrily. "Why are you still standing here? Get going," he ordered like a commander. Chapter 215. While Klaus was speaking with the leader of the guards, the array lit up once again. Gray was about to exit it, but there were only 2 guards from the Killing Empire there. Someone's coming out again. Before the leader of the guards from the Killing Empire could rush back to the array, the light died down, and Gray, who was covered in yellowish substance, appeared. The guards were initially taken aback seeing him, but when the leader of the guards from the Azure Empire saw the panicked expression in the face of the leader from the Killing Empire, he immediately knew Gray was not from their empire. He also noticed that Gray was in the 4th stage of the origin plane. Smiling evilly, he attacked. He was a water elementalist that was already in the 9th stage of the origin plane. Just one more breakthrough, and he would become an overlord plane expert. There was no way the 2 guards who were at the 6th stage could stop him. When his guards saw him attacking, they attacked the 2 guards as well. They didn't care if this might spark the flames of the battle between the 2 empires' guards here, but they knew there was no way the Killing Empire would want to risk fighting against them once the boy was dead. Even if they fought, it wouldn't be to the extent of them killing each other. Anger and despair surfaced in the faces of Alice, Reynolds, and Klaus. They felt even if Gray was powerful, defending against someone at the peak of the origin plane was impossible, given the difference in strength. But a little hint of hope appeared when they thought of how he managed to escape from the pursuit of Ethanth. According to Alice, it was above the origin plane. Gray, who was currently cursing his stupidity and swearing at Ethanth for spraying saliva and snot on him, was stunned when he not only sensed a thick killing intent coming towards him, but also a terrifying attack. The power of the attack was not on the level of Ethanth's attacks, but it was still too powerful for him, especially when he was being sneak attacked like this. Without the fusion state, he couldn't really defend against Ethanth's attacks. Gray immediately went into his defensive mode. Even Void, who was previously laughing at him because of the yellowish substance in his body, expression changed. This was the first time he was seeing the world, yet he was sneak attacked. What sort of welcoming was this? He still hadn't recovered his space essence, so helping Gray out of this Cirque-Dum stance was impossible. He couldn't even escape. He could only brace himself while also preparing to defend as well. The fire element was currently Gray's strongest element. Without even trying to figure out where the attack was coming from, he immediately raised a wall of blue flames around himself. After doing that, he also created an earth armor. The strongest earth armor he could create. Boom. The water snake, the leader of the guards from the Azure Empire sent towards him, crashed into the firewall. Contrary to the expectations of everyone, it didn't break through the defense instantly. What? The leader of the guards from the Azure Empire exclaimed in disbelief. Even though he could tell that the attack would eventually break through the defense, he was shocked by the quick reaction from Gray. He also didn't think that someone in the 4th stage of the origin plane could block his attack, even though it was just barely. Those watching also felt surprised by this. Seeing the blue flames had already ignited their surprise, but never in their wildest dreams did they think the young boy who just left the trial land would be able to react this quickly. He must die. The leader of the guards from the Azure Empire made up his mind. Those from the Blue Wind Empire, as well as the Stellar Empire, did nothing to stop Gray from being killed. Since he could block this attack, it meant he might also become a possible threat to them later in the future. The leader from the Killing Empire felt a little excited, hoping Gray could hold on for another 3 or 5 seconds. He couldn't allow someone who has such a special flame to die. His flame wasn't only special, but his strength and reaction speed were exceptional as well. He felt even some of his soldiers might not react as quickly as Gray did. The water snake soon gained the advantage, and quickly opened up a hole in the firewall. It crashed into Gray with a frightening force. Gray's body shot out from the other side of the flame wall. When the water snake hit him, he felt like his organs were falling apart, and his bones were destroyed. Luckily, his body was far stronger than that of a normal elementalist, but it didn't change the fact that he was currently in danger. After his body shot out of the firewall, it moved for almost 50 meters before falling down. Crash! He first crashed into the ground, but the force bounced him into the air again. After crashing about 4 times, his body finally slid into the ground before being stopped by a boulder. He was currently almost 100 meters away from where he was attacked. As soon as his body stopped moving, it was like time stood still. No one could believe what happened. They didn't think the leader from the Azure Empire would truly be this heartless enough to kill a genius from another empire. The leader wasn't only heartless, but he was extremely bold as well. Gray, Alice, Klaus, and Reynolds screamed in unison, while charging straight for the currently motionless Gray. "You animal," the leader of the guards from the Killen Empire said with angry eyes. He still couldn't believe what just happened. Everything happened within the space of a few seconds, yet it felt like it happened in 1 hour. Chapter 216. The leader of the guards from the Azura Empire smirked on hearing what the leader from the Killen Empire called him. He didn't care what they said about him, so long as he's doing what he was told to do by his empire. He was satisfied. But his smirk didn't form completely before it turned into a frown. Looking in Gray's direction, he could see that he was trying to stand up. Impossible. How can he survive that? He exclaimed in disbelief. He knew just how powerful his attack was. There was no way in the world that even someone in the 7th stage could survive it after being hit by the full force of it. Yet, Gray, who was only in the 4th stage of the origin plane, not only survived, but he was currently about to stand up. It wasn't even up to a minute yet. Klaus, Alice, and Reynolds, who were running in his direction, were elated when they noticed Gray was actually moving. "Ha ha, I knew he wouldn't die. You old dog, count your days." Klaus laughed out hysterically, while not forgetting to threaten the leader of the guards from the Azura Empire. "It's impossible. He shouldn't be able to stand this early even if he survives." The leader from the Azura Empire didn't even bother about Claw's threat because he still couldn't believe what was happening. The leader from the Killen Empire, who previously stood on the same spot thinking Gray was dead, was beside himself from joy. He couldn't believe Gray was alive. He acted quickly and headed in the direction of the leader from the Azura Empire. He was afraid if he went in Gray's direction, then the leader from the Azura Empire would get there before him. After all, he was closer than he was. Gray was currently struggling to get on his feet. Blood could be seen flowing out from the side of his mouth. The veins on his head bulged out while his eyes were red due to anger. After the light died down, he didn't even get the time to take in what was happening in his surroundings before he was attacked. When he stood up, he recalled Void was previously on his shoulder. "Where's he?" he asked while touching his shoulder. He couldn't feel Void there. Hastily, he looked around. Lying about 30 meters away from him was Void, who was currently motionless. His previous black fur was covered in blood. That was when it all settled in Gray's head. Just as the attack was about to reach him, Void jumped from his shoulder, taking the full force of the attack. This was the reason why, even though he was hit by the strike, it didn't affect him by much. The reason he was hurt was because of the times he bounced off the ground. Other than that, he was feeling a slight pain in his chest. Had he taken the strike head on, given his physical defense and earth armor, he wouldn't die, but he would most likely be seriously injured. "Void," he muttered softly as he staggered in his direction. "Void." He ran quickly while yelling the motionless Void's name with watery eyes. If he was told that he would cry one day because of Void, there was no way he would believe it. He didn't even think that if he were to see Void in such a state anytime he would get emotional. But one shouldn't forget that even though he tries to act mature sometimes, he was still only 17 years old, and he had never seen anyone close to him being hurt before. Klaus and the others were running towards him, yet he was running in the other direction where Void was lying. This boy is a threat, he must die. He didn't think that the small cat on the young boy's shoulder was what saved him, but he didn't care either. Since Gray was able to obstruct his attack even if it wasn't even up to 5 seconds, he had already regarded him as a threat to his empire. According to the orders they received, it was to remove all potential threats. Currently to him, Gray wasn't a potential threat. He was a threat that he had to eliminate at all costs. "Kill him." He immediately gave the order to his guards. Unlike the leader from the Killen Empire, he wasn't scared of them fighting to the death with the other guards. The reason for this was simple. He knew the guards from the Killen Empire wouldn't dare to fight to that level. His current plan was to hold off the guards from the Killen Empire and kill Gray. Since Klaus and the others were also here, he would kill them as well. Boom. The leader from the Killen Empire immediately attacked, trying to stop the leader from the Azura Empire from going close to Gray. He was an Earth Elementalist, so his attacks weren't something his opponent could neglect. The Earth element wasn't just used for protection, it's also deadly in attacks, and it has been proven during multiple wars. Its greatest asset when it came to attacking was its terrifying weight. The boulder that the leader from the Killen Empire sent towards the leader from the Azure Empire was blocked by the ice wall that appeared before him. Bam! Crack! Cracks appeared on the ice wall the moment the boulder came in contact with it. The force from the boulder was too much for the ice wall. Bang! The ice wall fell apart after a second boulder celebration into the scene. With no other option, the leader from the Azure Empire was forced to stand and fight against the leader from the Killen Empire. The guards from each camp had already started a brawl, but since the guards from the Azure Empire were closer to Grey, some were already heading in his direction, while the others tried to stop the guards from the Killen Empire. The entire scene was a mess, but the group from the Blue Wind Empire and the Stellar Empire just watched from the sides with folded hands. This had nothing to do with them. Chapter 217. Grey couldn't even sense the battle that was currently ongoing. The only thing in his eyes was Void, who was on his hands. He had tried communicating with Void via their mind link, but he didn't get a reply. He was almost on the verge of going crazy. Tears were already slowly flowing down his eyes. He couldn't think properly. It was like nothing else existed. Void, wake up, he called with his already croaked voice. While lightly shaking Void, he suddenly recalled what he promised himself while in the trial land. He said he would become the strongest, so that no one close to him would face any danger. Now, he hadn't even properly left the trial land, yet Void's life was already in danger. He didn't even know if he was still alive or not. His mind was a mess. Klaus and the others soon got to where he was, and Alice, seeing the bloodied Void, almost started crying. She liked Void even though they hadn't spent much time together. Klaus and Reynolds, on the other hand, were calmer. When they saw Grey's current state, they could tell he was hurting because of Void's current condition. Move aside, give him to me. Klaus hurriedly took Void from Grey's hand. He could tell Grey currently wasn't in his right mind. He couldn't blame him since he had spent the last 4 months or so with Void. Although he didn't know why Grey was this emotional over the cat, he could tell there was already a close bond between them. He blocked the attack, Grey said while staring at Void. He currently felt like killing someone, but since Void's state wasn't confirmed yet, he was holding himself back. As it stands, he didn't even mind using the fusion state. He's still alive, although barely, said Klaus. He had been too angry and sad when he saw Void's condition, and also when he didn't get any response from him, that he didn't try to check. Even if he checked, given his state, he wouldn't know if he was still alive or not. Don't you have that healing tonic we extracted from those snakes? Klaus asked. He wanted to call the name of the snakes, but he had completely forgotten about them. All he recalled was the sweet tonic as well as the use of it. Oh, that, I forgot about it. Grey was about to take out the healing tonic when Klaus stopped him. Not here, people are watching. If they see you suddenly making something magically appear from nowhere, then you'd be in bigger trouble, Klaus explained. The guard was in the 6th stage, so Reynolds couldn't really stop him. After blocking 2 attacks, he quickly summoned his elemental warrior. He knew doing this would put them in more danger, but if he didn't do it, then they might probably die. What's the use of hiding his strength when death was looming around them? Keep him close to you. Grey's eyes, which were already red, turned even redder. He wanted to fight. This was the only way he could release the pain and anger he was currently feeling. On the other side of the battle, the leader from the Killen Empire was in a heated battle with the leader from the Azure Empire. When he saw Reynolds fighting against the first guard that got close to them, he panicked and tried to go over. But there was no way his opponent would allow that. Watch as we kill all of them. The leader from the Azure Empire laughed happily. Presently, he wasn't even trying to go over anymore. He felt as long as he could keep the leader from the Killen Empire at bay, his men would take care of the rest. The leader from the Killen Empire pushed himself harder, but he still couldn't break away from his opponent. Despair soon appeared on his face. He felt like the stupidest person alive. How could he allow Klaus and the others who he had already brought to his side to go over? What was worse was that neither he nor his guards followed after them. They all stood dumbstruck when they thought Grey was dead. His despair increased when Reynolds summoned his elemental warrior. He should have been happy seeing this since it meant that they could survive a little more, but he felt more depressed. The reason was that he realized Grey wasn't the only outstanding person among his friends. With the current situation of things, he didn't think they would last long enough before he and his guards would manage to get to the other side. He could already see that 2 other guards from the Azure Empire were already edging over to Gray and his friends. One of the 2 was even in the 7th stage of the origin plane. There was no way Reynolds's elemental warrior could fight against them alone. HMPH. To think there's another threat amongst them. Haha. They will all die. The leader from the Azure Empire snorted coldly when he saw Reynolds summoning an elemental warrior. These people must die. They can't be left alive, he thought. In the Killen Empire's camp, the Overlord Plane expert had been watching everything that was happening since Gray was attacked till now, but it hadn't made a move yet. The thing that he was currently more curious about wasn't Gray or Reynolds who had an elemental warrior. Rather, it was the pitch black cat that was on Claw's hands. The others didn't notice it, but it couldn't escape the senses of an Overlord Plane expert. They all saw Void taking the strike for Gray. The thing that made all the Overlord Plane experts more curious was that even with their powerful senses, they couldn't figure out how Void moved from Gray's shoulder to his front and blocked the attack. It's almost like it teleported. Chapter 218. It's almost like it teleported, thought the expert from the Killen Empire. The expert from the Killen Empire was a plump lady whose hair was slowly starting to gray. What surprised the lady even more was the fact that Void not only blocked the attack, but he was still alive. Although he was seriously injured, they knew he would survive. Compared to Klaus' senses, theirs were far superior. The cat must be a strange magical beast, she thought. She had seen magical beasts that are cats, but almost all the powerful ones were big. Void, on the other hand, was small, too small to be noticed even. If not for his eye-catching pitch black fur, people would rarely take note of him. The plump lady couldn't sit still anymore when she saw Reynolds' elemental warrior. This group of youths not only had someone who had rare blue flames, but there was also a high-grade summoner as well. The Empire couldn't afford to lose them. It was time for her to intervene. She disappeared from where she was sitting, quickly flashing past the entrance of the camp. Even though she was fat, she had no issues with moving quickly. She appeared mid-air but was confronted by an old man with long white beards, who had both hands behind his back. Why don't we leave them to fate? If they can survive this, then they are true geniuses. The old man stroked his beard as he said. He was overjoyed just thinking of the talents the Killen Empire was about to lose. Once this was reported back to the Empire, he would be rewarded greatly. You shameless old man, get out of my way, the lady said while preparing to attack. Haha, I don't need to fight against you. All I need to do is delay you till they're killed. The old man laughed as the 2 started to struggle mid-air. They were by no means close to the battlefield on the ground, and they also couldn't afford to allow their attacks to hit those fighting, since it will most likely kill them. The Overlord Plane experts from the Blue Wind and Stellar Empires looked at the duo mid-air, but taking a glance at Void, they were more curious about him. But getting involved in the scuffle between the Killen Empire and the Azure Empire wasn't a good idea, unless there was something in it for them. On Gray's side, Reynolds's elemental warrior was fighting against the guard in the 6th stage, and it was surprisingly gaining the advantage. It was in the 5th stage, but its true strength was in the 6th stage. Against someone in the 6th stage, it naturally shouldn't be able to quickly overpower them. But it seems like this guy's elemental grade wasn't that high. His elemental grade was probably orange, hence him being weaker compared to those with purple or blue elemental grades. Whenever anyone close to him was hurt, his vengeful side comes out. People might hurt him, and he'll let them go. Well, that was on the premise they didn't show any killing intent. But messing with those close to him means incurring his wrath. He was currently quickly making 2 inscriptions mid-air, while also preparing a powerful fire spear that he shot straight at the guard who was fighting against the elemental warrior. The guard who just managed to dodge the elemental warrior's attack was faced with an attack that he couldn't dodge. He braced himself to face the attack head-on. He's just a 4th stage brat. Does he think because he accidentally managed to survive the leader's attack, he can become Kai? The guard thought. The guard was a wind elementalist, so he quickly created a wind screen before him. He was confident it would be able to defend against Gray's fire spear. His expression changed when he noticed the fire spear passing through the wind screen like a hot knife through butter. The power of Gray's fire element has always been stronger than his stage. One shouldn't forget that at the time he was in the first stage of the origin plane, his blue flame's power was already stronger than Quinn's darkness element's power. And at that time, Quinn was 2 stages above him, much less this guy whose elemental grade was orange. Boom. The fire spear first pierced into his thigh before exploding. The guard's scream of terror resonated in the entire area. Everyone was forced to look in that direction, and they all sucked in a cold breath when they saw the guard. He was currently lying on the ground, using both hands to try to hold onto his right leg. But the thing was, his right leg was gone. From his thigh down to his feet was missing. On the ground, bits of flesh and blood could be seen all around. Oh my god. Some of the guards from the Azure Empire exclaimed and looked at the guard in shock. Not all of them were looking at what was going on there. After all, most of them were currently in a heated battle. Some guards from the Blue Wind and Stellar Empire who witnessed the scene of Gray attacking were dumbfounded. How could he be so powerful? One of them asked. Most of them still had their mouths wide agape. To say they were shocked was an understatement. Just like everyone froze when the leader from the Azure Empire attacked Gray, the entire battlefield was also currently frozen. They were all in a state of disbelief, none of them moved an inch. They just stared at the wounded guard. Everyone stopped, except for the vengeful Gray. His eyes were currently bloodshot, and seeing an opportunity like this, he wouldn't miss it. He could tell the reason why everyone hadn't reacted was because of the surprise. Being warriors, they would quickly get over it. That was why he had to strike now. He wasn't the only one moving. Unlike people, the elemental warrior had no reason to be surprised. It had only one mission, and that was to kill his opponent. Nothing else mattered. Die. Gray muttered through gritted teeth as a large hand made of earth came out from the ground where the guard was lying. Gray closed his hand, and the earthen hand closed as well. Stop him. The guard in the 7th stage who was originally coming in Gray's direction attacked. But Reynolds was quick to react as he sent the elemental warrior to block the attack. No, the guard who was held by the hand screamed in fear when he sensed the hand closing. He was already too weak from the pain he was feeling in his leg. He still hadn't realized his leg was gone. The pain he was feeling made it too hard for him to previously think properly. But now, the fear of death woke him up. His screams soon came to an end as his body was crushed by the large earth hand. Blood was slowly dripping out from the hand that crushed him before it crumbled to the ground. Gray's bloodshot eyes turned to the other guard who was held up by the elemental warrior. The guards from the 2 empires which were watching the battle all gasped when they saw his eyes. Those were the eyes of a killer. What left them astounded was that it hadn't even been up to 15 seconds since Gray joined the battle, yet he had already killed one person. This was the first kill in the battle, and the one who did the killing was the one whom everyone thought would be the first to die. The leader from the Killen Empire was filled with joy. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. Since Gray could kill that guard at the 6th stage, it meant he had a chance against the other one who was in the 7th stage. The leader from the Azure Empire, on the other hand, couldn't believe what just happened. How could he be so strong? He asked in shock. Now he understood why Gray's firewall was able to stop his water snake for some time. It was overpowered. The leader from the Killen Empire attacked more fervently. Compared to before, he was more motivated now. In the sky, the 2 experts who were previously fighting stopped and looked at each other. They were slightly taken aback on seeing that Gray was actually able to almost one-shot someone who was 2 stages above him. Had the spear been aimed at the guard's head, then Gray would have killed him in one strike. HMPH. He won't survive past today. The old man snorted coldly. Ha ha. Watch as he kills your guards. The plump lady's cheek vibrated as she laughed. If Gray and the elemental warrior could kill another guard, then the result of the battle was fixed. Chapter 219. Gray's current appearance was something that neither of his friends had ever seen. Even he didn't know he had such a side to himself. Alice, Klaus, and Reynolds stared at the somewhat lonely figure that was standing before them. It was like this was the first time they were seeing Gray. He was currently releasing a horrifying killing intent. It was almost visible. The killing intent wasn't directed at them, yet they felt pressured by it. Alice and Klaus, who weren't involved in the battle, looked at each other. But other than the pressure from Gray's killing intent, they felt angry. Alice was originally aggressive. It didn't take long before she decided to join in on the battle. She also wanted to fight alongside her friends. Klaus was boiling inside, but because he had to take care of Void, he couldn't join in as well. Shit. I should be fighting, not cat-sitting, he said angrily. Gray was just about to attack the guard who was in the 7th stage. While fighting against the elemental warrior, the guard had a slight advantage. But as soon as Gray's attacks joined in, his life was placed in danger. Things went from bad to worse when Alice joined in. Luckily, the second guard in the 6th stage came over just after Alice joined the battle, so he was able to relieve him of the pressure. It hadn't been up to 1 minute, so Gray hadn't been able to complete any of the inscriptions. They had to fight against the guards using their normal attacks. Alice was using her lightning element, which is her fort. Gray was using his fire and earth element for attacking and defending, while the elemental warrior was originally made of lightning, so it used only the lightning element. After the group consumed the Great Earth Essence liquid, the power of their elements each saw a boost, which also goes for the elemental warrior as well. Now compared to before, it was more overpowered. Kill that brat first. The leader's order could be heard even on the chaotic battlefield. To him, Gray was the greatest threat, so he had to be eliminated first. The two guards fighting against Gray, Alice, and the elemental warrior, weren't having an easy time, so there's no way to carry out the order. The elemental warrior was facing off against the guard in the 6th stage, while Alice and Gray were fighting against the guard in the 7th stage. Had it been any two youths at the 4th and 3rd stage fighting against this guard in the 7th stage, they would probably have been dead. But he was unfortunate to have encountered these two. At first, he mostly focused on Gray's attacks and neglected Alice. But when he was hit by Alice's lightning whip, he almost cursed at his stupidity. What are they? He asked himself. He didn't even know if to classify Gray and his friends as humans. He had seen human geniuses before, but none like them. They were all too overpowered. Currently, Alice's attack power was almost at the 5th stage of the origin plane, and she was only in the 3rd stage. The reason she was defeated by the trio previously in the trial land was because of the numbers. Had they been only two, she wouldn't have had any problems with beating them up. Just as the guard was starting to fight back, Gray's inscriptions lit up mid-air. Buzz. Boom. The guard at the 7th stage was fast enough to sense the attack and quickly tried dodging it. On the other hand, the guard on the 6th was too focused on the elemental warrior to sense the attack. Before he realized it, the lightning bolt was already above him. For the second time in the battle, another scream of terror resonated in the area. The guard in the 6th stage was currently burnt all over his body. It was shocking that he managed to survive the attack even after literally taking it head-on. While he was shouting in pain, the elemental warrior drove its lightning sword into his head. The scream ceased abruptly before the guard dropped dead. The guard in the 7th stage, who just managed to escape from the lightning bolt, didn't have time to steady himself before Gray and Alice assaulted him with attacks. Gray sent out a barrage of fireballs, while Alice sent a lightning blade towards him. Bam! Boom! Another scream rang out in quick succession after the first one, but this time, it didn't stop. The guard in the 7th stage was currently missing an entire arm. His left arm had been detached from his body by a lightning blade. Alice smirked when she saw this and continued attacking. Gray hadn't stopped attacking, so why would she? Stop. Stop. I don't want to fight anymore. The guard in the 7th stage yelled in horror. Not everyone is brave enough to face death. Seeing Alice and Gray's incoming attack, the guard knew in his current injured condition, he couldn't fight against them properly. They're youngsters, they wouldn't kill me if I give up, thought the guard. But to his surprise, neither of them stopped. He could understand that since Gray was a man, and he was the one who was sneak attacked, he naturally had the right to be angry. However, what he couldn't comprehend was why Alice, who looked so young and tender, had such a bloodthirsty nature. She didn't even blink when he told them to stop. I give up, stop. I'm only following orders, he said again, trying to get them to stop attacking. Gray and Alice didn't even bother and attacked ruthlessly. The already injured and scared guard couldn't fight against the bloodthirsty duo. He could only blame his leader for what was happening. He died with eyes wide open, as if trying to tell the world that he died wrongly. While Gray and Alice were fighting against the guard in the 7th stage, the elemental warrior had located another opponent. In a battle that had 2 Overlord plane experts, 2 9th stage Origin plane experts, it was unbelievable that the ones making the impact were 3 youths. One was in the 4th stage, while the other 2 were in the 3rd stage. In contrast to the intense battle ongoing, Klaus was surprisingly the most eye-catching person, even though he wasn't even fighting. The reason for this was because he was cheering on his friends from the sidelines in a very distracting way. Some of the guards fighting had been distracted by it. He made what looked like a mini volcano, but out of ice. Whenever Gray, Alice, or the elemental warrior's attack struck anyone, the volcano would explode, shooting out snow into the air. He became his friend's unofficial cheerleader. The people from the Blue Wind and Stellar Empire's camp would occasionally take a glance at him. They couldn't help but wonder how such a weirdo had so amazing friends. There were even times when he would say catchy phrases. In the space of within 4 minutes, they've been kept amused by Klaus even when an intense battle was ongoing. Gray and Alice quickly went over to join the elemental warrior, who was being ganged up on. One more guard teamed up with the one it was previously fighting against, making it 2. While Gray was slowly going into the battlefield, he was searching for the leader of the guards from the Azure Empire. That was the person who caused all this. He was the one who hurt Void, so naturally, he should die. Another 2 minutes went by, and one more guard from the Azure Empire was killed by the trio. More guards from the Azure Empire couldn't attack them because they were all occupied. They couldn't try to turn and attack Gray and his friends, because they were currently facing off against the guards from the Killen Empire. Yet, they couldn't fight against the guards from the Killen Empire fully, because of the fear of being attacked by Gray and his friends. Each empire had to send in the same number of guards here. With the removal of 2 from the Azure Empire, it placed them in a very unfavorable position. Although they had some guards who could fight against 2 people, the Killen Empire also had guards like that as well. The old man from the Azure Empire realized things were no longer going in their favor, and if he allows this to continue, then most of their guards would die. Order you guards to stop. If this continues, you should know not only my guards will die. We can't allow the other 2 to gain the upper hand. The old man tried persuading the lady from the Killen Empire. The lady knew he was right, even though Gray and his friends had surprisingly managed to kill 3 guards. She could also see that some of her guards were also injured. Another guard's scream of fear spread on the battlefield. Gray, Alice, and the elemental warrior had killed yet another guard, increasing the tally to 4. Another one. Are these really kids? The old man thought, frightened. Gray's ruthlessness was not something youngsters should have. Although they could sense that he was incensed, they still couldn't believe he was killing people this easily. Chapter 220. The lady was taken aback seeing Gray and his friends killing yet another guard. But she knew that if this continues, even if more of the guards from the Azure Empire dies, some of her guards would still die. That wasn't good for them, since the Blue Wind and Stellar Empires still had their complete guards. There was also the problem of Reynolds's elemental warrior. She didn't know how long it would last. It has been the thing making the killings easy for Gray and Alice. Once the elemental warrior dissipates, then things wouldn't be like this anymore. Fine. I think you've learned enough lessons for today, the lady said with a smug smile. She was winning, so she had every reason to be happy. Presently to her, Gray and his friends are gems, people that would take the Empire to its greatest height. She planned on sending a report to the Emperor about this incident, so the Emperor would know how to treat them. The old man sighed in relief when he heard her agree to what he said. He couldn't watch on as these monsters who masquerade themselves as kids kill off all his guards. To him, Gray and his friends were monsters, not kids. They stopped fighting and quickly descended while ordering both guards to stop fighting. The guards from both empires stopped fighting, except for 3 figures, Gray, Alice, and the elemental warrior. They had no reason to listen to the Overlord plane expert, and besides, Gray hadn't vented enough. The guards who were being attacked by the trio were forced to continue fighting, since stopping would mean their deaths. When the guards from the Azure Empire saw that Gray still didn't stop his assault, they all wanted to gang up on him, but the guards from the Killen Empire acted quickly, holding them down. With things being like this, it became extremely difficult to stop the battle. The Overlord plane experts couldn't stop it, since Gray had no plans of stopping now. Yet, they couldn't allow it, since it would cause further damage to each camp. The lady from the Killen Empire quickly moved in Gray's direction. "Stop this now," she ordered. The lady had an awkward expression since she thought after hearing her order, Gray and his friends would stop fighting. She felt annoyed being ignored by these youngsters in front of so many people. Even if they're geniuses, they still need at least 5 years before they can get to the Overlord Plane. She thought angrily. Some people can't even break through to the Overlord Plane, so an Overlord Plane expert should be given the respect they deserve. With anger evident in her voice, she ordered once more, "Stop this now." But just like before, Gray didn't bother to listen to her. Currently, other than the guard fighting against Gray, the others all stood still, looking in Gray's direction. Even Alice and Reynolds had stopped fighting. Alice walked closer to Gray. "Hey, that's enough. You need to take care of Void." Hearing Void's name, Gray grew more enraged. Alice felt genuinely angry because of their situation. On one hand, she wanted to get revenge for Void just like Gray. But on the other hand, she knew she couldn't allow Gray to keep up with this. There's a chance he might die if he continues, and there's also the possibility of him changing forever. Clenching her fist tightly, she walked closer to him. Looking at Gray, she felt he was like someone who was losing his mind to anger. She raised her hand, and, in the battlefield which only the sound of Gray's attack was being heard, a hard slap rang out in all directions. "Enough. Void needs you. We need you," she said softly with watery eyes to Gray, who was in a state of shock. Klaus and Reynolds were standing close to each other with mouths currently shaped like an O. "Oh, that took an unexpected turn," Klaus said, not feeling Alice's actions were wrong. In fact, he applauded her decision internally. "Yeah." Gray seemed to be on the verge of losing it. Reynolds nodded. When they saw the Overlord Plane experts, they felt it was probably time to stop the fighting, for now. But they didn't expect Gray to continue fighting. Not heeding to a single word the lady said, Gray stood still, not expecting Alice to slap him. His pupils dilated, before turning to looked at Alice with his infuriated eyes. But all he saw was care. Care for her friend who was on the verge of taking a path he might probably regret for the rest of his life. He stood in the same position for some seconds while staring at her watery eyes. Everything slowly started playing out in his mind once again. He recalled how he felt when he thought Void was dead, and pain as well as the hate and rage. Recalling Void's injury, "Void," he said slowly before turning around, heading in Klaus's direction. The Overlord Plane experts couldn't believe that Gray did all this just for a cat, a magical beast pet. Yes, it saved his life, but they didn't think a magical beast was actually worth all this. To them, magical beasts were tools. Once they're useless, they should be discarded. It might be special, but it's not the only one in the world. There are other beasts he could easily train to block attacks for him. Why go to such lengths? Alice went after her friends since Gray and the others started walking away, but she was stopped by the lady. "What academy are you from?" the lady asked. Since the four of them were friends, they should be from the same academy. "Luna," Alice said while trying to walk out. "Thank you for stopping him," said the lady. She thought Alice did what she did because of her, and since these people would turn out to be very useful later in the future, she thought of putting on a good impression on them. "You don't need to thank me. I did it for myself and my friends." Alice looked at the trio who were walking alongside each other and smiled lightly. These three weirdos were her friends, her best friends. Some people find it strange that her best friends were actually boys. They felt since she is a girl, her best friend or friends should be girls as well. But she didn't really think about it. These were the only people she could be free with. They were the ones who she knew in times of danger. They wouldn't think twice before running to her aid even if there's a chance of them endangering their lives. The lady looked at her but didn't say anything. Alice quickly caught up with them before saying, "Guys, you know that isn't our camp, right?" Klaus and Reynolds looked around and realized they were actually heading in the Azure Empire's camp direction. But being the shameless people that they were, he's the one leading. They pointed at Gray simultaneously, trying to shift the blame to him. He was the one who was at the front, so shifting blame looks very easy. Gray looked behind them but didn't say anything. He wasn't in that mode. He shifted his gaze to Alice. "Thank you. It's nothing. We're friends, so we should help each other out." Alice smiled softly. "Yeah, I know, but thank you," Gray said before looking in the direction of the leader from the Azure Empire. They weren't far from him, since they were technically still around the Azure Empire's camp. The leader looked at the youngster who survived his sneak attack in hatred. He would be punished because of his mistake. Had he been able to kill him, he would have been rewarded, but causing the death of 4 of his guards, while still not being able to kill the boy, was something he would be punished for. Count your days, Gray said calmly. Compared to before, he wasn't putting on an angry expression or even acting like someone who was infuriated. Rather, he acted as if nothing happened. This actually scared the leader more than when Gray was infuriated. Given Gray's talent, he knew as long as Gray broke through to the 7th stage while he was still in the 9th stage, he wouldn't stand a chance against him. Is that a threat? The leader asked icily. No, I don't threaten people. Gray continued walking, not turning to look at him anymore. The leader narrowed his eyes. If he were threatened by someone else in Gray's age, he would laugh it off, not even bothering to think about it. But he had seen Gray in action, and all he saw was a ruthless killer. Chapter 221. Gray and the others soon got to the Killing Empire's camp. There were different tents, and Klaus asked if the group could get a private tent. A guard took them to a tent that wasn't far from the Overlord Plane Expert's tent. The guards felt the people from the Azure Empire might still try to kill them. They even went as far as stationing 3 guards at the front of the tent. Let me take a look at the cat, the lady said gently. She realized speaking to Gray in an authoritative way wouldn't yield any results. Thank you for your concern, but it isn't needed. He'll be fine. Gray spoke in the same emotionless manner. He could tell that the way the lady was looking at Void was strange, so he didn't want to hand him over to her. Since he had the healing tonic from the Blooming Vipers, he would use one on him. Okay, take this. It should help. The lady took out the tonic from the small bag she was wearing. She felt curious about Void, but since Gray didn't even want to let anyone else take him, then there was no use in disturbing him about it. Gray took the tonic from her and went into the tent. Thank you. My friend is just sad because his pet is injured. He's usually not like this. Alice thanked the lady before going in. Klaus and Reynolds also thanked her before going in. They knew the reason Gray didn't thank her was that he was still annoyed, but mostly worried about Void. After entering the tent, "What are you doing?" Klaus asked when he saw Gray busying himself around the tent. The tent wasn't that large, around 15 square meters. There was a cotton that separated it into 2. Gray was currently on the other side of the tent, moving from one spot to the other. Array, those old guys are snooping around in here. I think they are curious about Void. Gray spoke hurriedly. Presently, he knew his life was in danger given his previous performance, so bringing out this as well would put him in more danger. There's also the problem of him making the healing tonic appear out of nowhere. Do you have some stones? He asked, looking at the trio. He had studied Chris's array books, so he knew of an array that could block the senses of those in a higher plane from snooping. Although, he wasn't really confident in it, since he had not done it before. They gave him the stones that they had in their bags. After placing them in the needed lines, the lines lit up before fading. Give me your bag. He stretched out his hand to Klaus. There was a chance of the array not working, so he wanted to act like he took the tonic out of his bag. Klaus passes his bag over to Gray, who quickly placed his hand inside like he was taking something out. The hand he placed inside was the one the spatial ring was on. He brought out the tonic and quickly poured it into the mouth of Void. Looks like the brat has a way of healing his pet, the old man said while closely monitoring Gray's actions. He knew he wasn't the only one who was watching Gray. Gray's performance was just too eye-catching that he had the idea of luring him to their empire. If the Azure Empire could nurture a talent like him, he could single-handedly defeat an entire army once he grows to his peak. Gray not heeding to the lady's orders even made him more convinced that he could bring him over to their empire. Luckily, he wasn't that old yet, so there's still the chance of brainwashing him. All they needed to do was provide him with all he wanted, and he would slowly start becoming loyal to them. The old man knew a thing or two about the Killing Empire, and he knew the Lunar Academy was not on good terms with the Royals, because of a certain man called Chris. He's proficient in arrays as well, such a talent, praised the old man. It was only now he recalled the inscriptions he saw during the battle. This further made him want to make Gray a part of their empire. Huh, he exclaimed slightly when he realized what Gray was doing. Cunning brat. He complained after he couldn't sense anything happening anymore. He was forced to come out of his tent and ascend into the sky, but to his surprise, he wasn't the only one who appeared mid-air. This time, it was all 4 Overlord plane experts from all camps. "Why are you all looking at my camp?" the lady asked. "Don't act like you also don't want to know what the boy is doing," said the old man. "HMPH, what he's doing is none of my business," the lady snorted coldly. Yes, she was curious, but she couldn't give these old guys the chance to pry into her empire's genius secret. "Why don't we go and check?" the old man from the Azure Empire insisted. The other 2 men from the 2 empires looked at him but didn't reply. After looking in Gray's tent direction once more, they went back to their tents. "Not everyone is as stupid as you are, old man," the lady laughed, seeing the others ditching him. "HMPH, the old man snorted coldly before going back to his tent. He wanted to convince the other 2 to force their way into the Killen Empire's camp, but looks like his plan was unsuccessful. "I'll take the boy, one way or another," he thought. The lady looked at Gray's tent for some time, "Sigh, this is going to be difficult." She couldn't control Gray, nor his friends, and from the looks of it, neither can the Empire. As it stands, the relationship between the Lunar Academy and the Royals was heated, and there were a lot of rumors going around about a possible fight against them. 3 hours went by, and Gray and his friends stayed inside their tent without coming out. Just like Void said, the healing tonic was very impressive. Void wasn't awake yet, but he was already looking good. Gray was sitting close to him, stroking his fur. A slight smile was on his face. "Void is going to freak out if he finds out we soaked him in water for over 2 hours, he thought jokingly. Later that night, "Hello," a voice came from outside Gray's tent. Alice and the others walked out, but Gray was currently sitting in a meditative state. He was extremely tired from the prolonged battle with Eatonth. Adding this intense battle and the emotional stress, he couldn't stay awake. On going out, Alice and the others saw the lady standing outside. "We'll be leaving first thing in the morning. We can't afford to let you stay here any further," said the lady. "Okay, thank you for your help." Alice bowed to show her gratitude. Klaus and Reynolds quickly bowed. Well, after being dragged by Alice, the lady left and the trio walked back into the tent. They were speaking of today's event when they suddenly sensed a power surge from the motionless Gray. Boom. The tent rippled as the energy wave spread in all directions. Klaus and Reynolds looked at Gray, and they were surprised to actually see the elemental particles around him. This Klaus couldn't complete what he was saying. 5 different elemental particles were around Gray: red, silver, blue, brown, and green. This represented 5 elements: fire, lightning, water, earth, and wind. "How's this possible?" Alice opened her mouth in shock. "He's having a breakthrough," Reynolds said with surprise. "We know that, but he only has 3 elements. This doesn't make any sense," Klaus said. "An elementalist can only absorb the elements that he an affinity to, so how can Gray absorb 5 different elements?" Quickly, Alice looked at Klaus in panic. Klaus had already made a move, creating an ice sphere that covered Gray completely. After the first shockwave that spread out, Klaus quickly sealed Gray inside his ice sphere. This stopped the aura from spreading out. In the Killen Empire's camp, the guards sensed a strong energy wave that quickly disappeared. "What's that?" one of the guards asked. "Go over to their tent, make sure nothing happens to them," the leader ordered. He felt it might be an assassin who wanted to kill Gray and his friends, but accidentally released some of his aura. Chapter 222. Gray, whose eyes were closed, was totally oblivious to what was happening outside. This was not the first time he was breaking through, so he didn't really think much about his breakthrough here. It wasn't like he had ever caused a ruckus before when breaking through. Moreover, he was currently in a state that even he didn't understand. He felt relieved. Breaking through might relieve one physically, but not mentally. Yet, he felt relieved both physically and mentally. It was like his previous mental state was also going through a breakthrough. He didn't feel annoyed anymore, nor did he even think about the leader of the guards from the Azure Empire who hurt Void. He continued his breakthrough without a care in the world, extremely relaxed. He even had a satisfied smile on his face. Klaus, Reynolds, and Alice watched his every movement from outside the ice sphere. "Should this be possible?" Reynolds asked, shifting his gaze to the other 2. "No," Klaus answered firmly, before adding, "unless he initially had all 5 elements. That's impossible. He was tested before coming to the academy, and even after entering the academy, his results showed he had only 2 elements at that time. Alice explained. They all knew of Gray's story, and Klaus even confirmed it, since his father was close to Chris. Not just that, but they also knew it was impossible to gain a new element. They didn't find it weird when he displayed his fire element, since they thought it was the expert's legacy, but now they couldn't think of an explanation for the 2 new elements. But how's he doing that? Reynolds pointed at Gray, who was absorbing the elemental particles of 5 different elements. We don't know, but being able to absorb them means he has an affinity with them. Klaus placed his hand on his temple, gently massaging it. For some reason, he suddenly had a headache from the multiple questions that were running through his head. How's this possible? If people were to find out about it, wouldn't that put him in danger? Why the fuck didn't he tell me about this? Should I beat him up for not trusting me? What would a soup made with the healing tonic taste like? Will I ever find true love? Why is Trisha's BBS so small? I still don't see what Pharrell has that I don't. Do magical beasts state? Or do they just skip to the main part? Klaus's mind soon wandered from Gray's secret to different weird things. Sigh, I really need to keep my thoughts to myself. The day I'll think out loud will be the end of me. He sighed wryly. Someone's coming. Alice turned to look at the entrance to the tent. They must have sensed the first energy wave. Let's head out to make sure Gray isn't disturbed or seen. Klaus suggested. If Gray is seen in this state, it would spell danger for him. Being the wielder of 5 elements wouldn't be a blessing, rather, it was a curse. Even the Killen Empire wouldn't allow someone who has 5 elements to keep growing, especially with how powerful his fire element was. The guards who were sent to check on them got to the tent, but they realized the 3 guards stationed there were still there. What are you doing outside? Did you check on them? One of the newly arrived guards asked the trio who was stationed there. Is something wrong? The first guard stationed there asked hastily. The guards stationed here surprisingly didn't sense the energy wave that Gray gave off, even with how close they were to him. You didn't sense that strange aura. Quickly, let's go inches. The newly arrived guard who spoke previously hurriedly rushed towards the tent. Just as they were about to go in, Klaus, Alice, and Reynolds rushed out. What's going on? Did something happen? Klaus asked 2 questions in quick succession. Where's the last one? The newly arrived guard asked when he saw that only the 3 of them came out instead of 4. Our friend is very tired. He's already asleep, answered Alice. I'll check on him just to be sure, the guard said. You going inside would disturb his rest. We're his friends. We naturally aren't stupid enough to say he's fine if he isn't, Klaus said coldly. He knew if he spoke to the guard softly, the guard would insist on going in. Even after saying this, the guard still insisted on seeing him. It was only after a combined effort from Klaus and the others did he finally decide to stay outside. Okay, we'll stay out here. Yell if there are any issues, the guard said before standing around the tent. Klaus hated being monitored, but their current situation warranted it. In the Overlord Plane Expert's tent. This aura, she muttered softly, trying to find where the aura was coming from. It disappeared almost as soon as it appeared, making it difficult to sense it out. I'll have to make sure to watch the kids. There's a high chance of that old man being responsible for this. She stood up, walked out of her tent and took to the sky. The safety of Gray and his friends was just too important to her. She had even prepared a letter that had a report of what happened here. Back inside the cave, wouldn't the Overlord Plane experts be able to trace the aura here? Reynolds asked worriedly. Klaus acted quickly, but their senses are sharper than Origin Plane elementalists. Hopefully, Gray's array should be able to keep them out. Alice looked at Gray. Today had been stressful for her to say the least. What's taking him so long? He needs to end this soon, Reynolds said worriedly. Crack. Shit. The energy wave is intense, Klaus complained. This ice sphere could withstand an all-out attack of a 3rd stage Origin Plane elementalist, yet it was breaking under the impact of Gray's energy wave. Klaus hastily created another sphere before the first one breaks down. Chapter 223. 30 minutes later, Gray's breakthrough was already finished, but he still had both eyes closed, not showing any signs of moving from his sitting position. Now, he was a 5th stage Origin Plane elementalist. The Overlord Plane was just a few stages away. Looks like his array worked. Alice looked around. The lady didn't show up, which meant that she couldn't trace the aura here. There's also the possibility of the lady not wanting to alert them of her being aware of what happened tonight. Yeah, probably. So, do you think he knows about this? Klaus asked the other two. The two looked at him without replying. Like, maybe he doesn't know he has an affinity with the wind and water element, he explained. Since he's absorbing it, he should be aware of them. How else would he absorb them if he doesn't attract them to himself? Alice looked at Klaus. I'm just saying, there's a chance this might be a new development he doesn't know of. Klaus shrugged. We'll find out when he's awake, Alice said. Find out about what? He asked with a confused expression. The trio was slightly surprised that he had finally woken up. Did you notice anything strange when you were breaking through just now? Klaus asked strangely. Strange when I was breaking through. Did something strange happen? Gray wore a baffled face. Since when does something strange happen when he is breaking through? Not really, only that you were able to absorb 5 different elements instead of 3. Alice took charge of the questioning. Huh, how did you know that? Gray asked in shock, before realizing he shouldn't have asked that question. Damn it, I should have acted like I didn't know what they were talking about, he complained internally. The trio's expression took a change when they heard what he said. Does that mean that you have 5 elements? Asked Reynolds. Yes. Gray could only helplessly nod. The cat was out of the bag anyway, so there's no way he could deny it. But how's that possible? Klaus looked at Gray in awe. He also felt like Gray was more freakish compared to Reynolds, who was a high-grade summoner. That I'll explain later. First of all, tell me how you found out about this. What happened when I was breaking through? Gray asked seriously. He felt something must have happened when he was breaking through. That made his friends realize he didn't have 3 elements, but 5. Klaus went on to tell him about the commotion he caused when breaking through. He also told him about the manifestation of the elemental particles which led to them figuring out about him being able to use 5 elements. Wait, you mean the elemental particles were actually visible? Gray couldn't help but ask. He had just been told this, but he found it extremely shocking to believe. This wasn't the first time he had broken through. Even when he was breaking through to the origin plane, he didn't cause any ruckus, other than the time he wanted to refine his body. Yes, all 5 elemental particles were visible. Luckily, we were here, else you might have been in danger given the fact that there are no records of anyone ever having 4 elements, much less 5. Alice said. Also, how the hell did you have 5 elements? I record your test only showed 2. Klaus looked at him seriously. Gray sighed before saying, quote, Sigh, I plan to tell you all anyway, so there's no use if I tell you now, or later. I can comprehend new elements. Wait, what? Klaus and Reynolds exclaimed simultaneously, but their mouths were quickly closed by Alice. I mean, I can gain new elements. I originally had only the lightning element, but I comprehended the earth element before my test. Gray explained. Gasps. The trio gasped in shock. Well, Klaus and Reynolds tried too, but with Alice's hands covering their mouths, it wasn't easy. Meaning you can? Alice looked at the sleeping void. Yes, but it's not as easy as it sounds. The 2 elements I comprehended here were due to external factors. The space element is much more complex to comprehend than the other elements. I haven't even been able to start studying it properly yet. Gray continued. You. Klaus tried speaking, but with Alice covering his mouth, all they heard were mumblings. Gray, Alice, and Reynolds looked at him. Oh, sorry. Alice hastily removed her hands from the duo's mouths. Thank you. You mean you already have 1 more element before coming here? Asked Klaus. Yeah. I awoke my wind element when I went out on a mission. Gray smiled. You only left the academy once, Reynolds said. Yeah, that was the time, Gray affirmed. Wow, that's so insane. Is there a reason for this? Reynolds asked, but quickly shut his mouth. This was a great secret. It must have taken a lot from Gray just to tell them this. Yet, he wanted to know more. Gray acted like he didn't hear the question before smiling at his friends. There's one more thing though. Oh, what's that? They looked at him curiously. I can increase my elemental grade, Gray said with a mysterious smile. Even though he couldn't tell them of the pearl, telling them of his ability to gain new elements and increasing his elemental grade wasn't that bad, since there's a chance they might also find out someday. What? This time, Klaus and Reynolds weren't the only ones who exclaimed. Even Alice exclaimed in shock. They all looked at Gray in disbelief. They previously felt being able to comprehend and gain new elements was insane, but hearing about being able to improve his grade, they didn't know what to think anymore. Was there anyone more amazing than the young man who was sitting before them? The answer is most likely no. Chapter 224. The next morning, when Gray and his friends came out, the lady was surprised when she noticed Gray had already broken through to the 5th stage of the origin plane. Could it be he was the one who released that aura yesterday? She asked herself. The timing of Gray's breakthrough and the release of that aura was just too coincidental. She knew during the previous day, Gray was still only at the 4th stage. No, it shouldn't. The aura I sensed wasn't something a 5th stage origin plane elementalist should have. She contemplated. The aura she felt was stronger than even what a 6th stage origin plane elementalist has, so she couldn't link Gray's breakthrough with the aura. You broke through yesterday, she said. Yeah. I was already close to breaking through before I left the trial land, Gray replied. That's good. The Empire needs more people like you. The lady nodded repeatedly while studying Gray. Thank you for yesterday. Gray bowed slightly. It's nothing. Oh, how's your pet? The lady asked when she saw Void on Gray's hand. Void currently had his eyes closed. He woke up the previous night while Gray and his friends were speaking, but since they couldn't show the others he was already fine, he had to pretend he was asleep. He's better now, but it'll take a while before he wakes up. Gray smiled softly. What element does your cat have? The lady asked curiously. Wind, Gray said offhandedly. It's quite fast for a wind elementalist. The lady continued looking at Void. Looks like the Overlord plane experts saw him when he helped me. But luckily, they have no knowledge of the space element. No wonder she wanted to take Void. She planned on studying him, thought Gray. Gray smiled without responding any further. He had already told her Void was a wind elementalist. There's no reason for him to keep answering her questions. Seeing no more response from Gray, the lady sensibly stopped asking about Void. Are you all going back to your academy? Or are you willing to join the Empire's forces? She asked. Once a citizen of the Empire breaks through to the origin plane, they can freely join the Empire's forces. They would all be given positions according to their stages as well as their potentials. The lady felt with Gray's talent, his position wouldn't be meager. We haven't decided yet, Alice answered. Of all of them, only Gray and Reynolds didn't really have a prominent background. Given Reynolds' background, the chances of him joining the army is very high, since it would increase his family's background. Gray, on the other hand, didn't seem like someone who cared about the Empire or joining any forces. Just like Klaus and Alice, he didn't want to get involved in anything. Okay, they'll drop you off at the capital, said the lady. You don't need to worry much about us, just drop us off at the borders of the Empire. Klaus waved, rejecting the lady's idea of taking them to the capital. No, it's not safe letting you four wander around the Empire, especially after what happened yesterday. The lady immediately rejected their suggestion. Leaving the four alone would probably mean their deaths. She felt the Azure Empire hadn't given up on their attempt to kill Gray, so they would most likely send people after them. Fine, take us to Red City, Klaus said after getting a nod from Gray. The lady looked at them before helplessly nodding. She knew she couldn't change their minds, so she could only agree to get them to Red City. After all, it was deep in the Empire. Although it was a small city, it was relatively safe. These will be the guards accompanying you all. They are all in the 8th stage of the origin plane. The lady introduced them to 5 young men. The young men all looked to be in their late 20s. According to the lady, after they left the academy, they joined the Empire's forces. The reason they were already in the 8th stage was because of the items provided by the Empire for their growth. Gray and the others naturally knew she was only saying this to try to lure them into joining the Empire's forces. Other than smiling, they didn't show any signs of even giving it a thought, except for Reynolds. Maybe they're from great backgrounds, she thought. I forgot to ask, what are your names? The lady asked. She wanted to tell the Emperor about them. Although her rank wasn't high, she could inform her superiors about them. Klaus, Alice, and Reynolds told her their names. She easily recognized Klaus and Alice's family, but she didn't know a thing about Reynolds' family. What about you? She looked at Gray. Gray, Gray said. Just Gray? The lady couldn't help but ask. Gray looked at her for a while. His last name was something he rarely said, even his mother rarely used it. He recalled it was Dawson, but since his father was gone for such a long time now, he didn't like talking about it, since it always reminded him of his father. Dawson, Gray Dawson, he said gently. I don't know about any Dawson family from Red City. She scanned her memories for a Dawson family from Red City, but she didn't know of any. She thought hard about it, but just like Reynolds's family, she knew nothing of it. Maybe they are a small family. This should increase the chances of him deciding to join the Empire's forces. She thought internally. Of all Gray's friends, Gray was the one she wanted the most. Reynolds was the second, then Alice, before Klaus. She placed Klaus on the end of the list, because she didn't see him make any move other than cheering animatedly on the sidelines. So she didn't know just how strong he was. Okay, they'll take you to Red City. Just make sure to head to your academy soon. The Empire might summon all four of you, she said. There's a chance the Empire would summon them once they get the news of what happened here. Gray's talent and ruthlessness would make him a terrifying figure if placed on a battlefield. Reynolds's elemental warrior was strong. Alice could not be removed from the picture as well. But Klaus, there was nothing she could say about him. The group soon left the camp, heading for Red City. The journey would take the group at least a day and a half, which was on the premise that they traveled without rest. But since the beasts couldn't fly continuously for such a long time, they would naturally have to rest while on the journey. 2 days later, the sun was just about to set when 2 huge birds landed on a forest. These were the birds that carried Gray and his friends from the border of the magical beast forest. The journey was surprisingly safe. The young men guarding the group didn't believe it would be this peaceful, according to what the lady told them. They thought they will be attacked while taking Gray and his friends here, but not even a magical beast attacked them. Thank you, we'll be going now, Gray said as he leads the group out of the forest. This was the same forest he first saw Brown. He still couldn't help but look at the area where Chris left Brown feeling a little nostalgic. Is this the city you came from? Klaus asked while looking at the city gates. This was the smallest city gate he had ever seen. Alice and Reynolds looked at the city walls curiously as well. Although Reynolds wasn't from a big family, the city he came from was bigger than Red City. Even the mayor was in the origin plane. Yeah, I spent 15 years of my life here. Gray nodded with a soft smile. He couldn't say he was overly attached to this city. After all, his memories here weren't that fun. Other than his mother, he didn't really have any other friends here. Come on, let's go check it out. I'll show you where I stayed. He walked through the city gates, heading into the city. The guards at the gates were all in the fusion plane. Unlike the gates of big cities like Lunar City and the rest, Red City wasn't bustling. The activity was minimal, since merchants rarely came here. The group walked in. Klaus and Reynolds were particularly looking around curiously. Alice would occasionally take a glance around, but would then focus on their journey. Gray soon got to the building he used to stay. He looked at it, and it was just like the way he left it, only he still felt there was something missing. His mother. He stood on the roadside looking at it. This is where I grew up. The others had already guessed it, seeing that he stood here looking at the building for some time. It's nice. Alice smiled softly. Klaus and Reynolds looked at the building for some time. So, what did you usually do for fun here? Klaus asked. Chapter 225. Does training count? Gray asked after thinking for a while. Unlike Lunar City, Red City was too small, so there are almost 0 places where one could have fun. Of course, there were taverns and inns, but not on the same level as Lunar City. There were also a few places with women, just like the Jade Water Paradise Klaus and Reynolds usually goes to in the capital. Since when have training been fun? Klaus asked while looking at him weirdly. Even Reynolds had an odd expression. Oh, then nothing. No, wait, there are some times I follow my mother to the market to buy things for cooking. It's pretty fun. Does that count? Gray looked at the duo. Okay, you're a no fun guy, we get it. Klaus stopped him from speaking. How could going to the market with your mother be fun? It's exhausting. Klaus didn't get the chance to go with his mother though, since she died early. He rarely knew her, but his father did a nice job training him, so he doesn't usually remember the fact that he didn't have a mother. Reynolds looked around. but there was nothing interesting around here. Of the group, Alice and Void were the more composed ones. Alice looked around curiously, while Void looked around enthusiastically. During the journey here, he had to pretend he was still asleep, but as soon as they left the guards who brought them here, he instantly stood up. So this is where he grew up, lame, he thought arrogantly. There weren't any shiny things even in the streets. How could someone grow up here? The houses didn't even look classy. They all looked old, almost like the ones in the trial land. Wait here, I'll be right back, Gray said to the others before walking to the building on the left side of the one he previously lived in. This building was occupied by a family of 4, an old lady, a middle-aged man and woman, and finally, a little boy. Although, the boy might not be so little anymore, since it has been a while Gray last saw him. Gray knocked on the door of the building. After waiting for a while, he heard footsteps from inside. The door opened, and he saw a young boy who looked to be around 10 years old or so. The boy had a short hair, just like Gray, only his hair was blonde while Gray's was black. He still had baby fat which made his face look chubby. He had an enchanting sapphire-colored eyes and a pointed nose. When Gray came with Chris the last time, they weren't around. Wow, he's already so big. It hasn't even been up to 3 years I left, he exclaimed inside. The young boy who opened the door for him was called Ethan. When Gray went for his first test, Ethan was still only 4 years old or so. After his result was announced, Ethan's parents, his father to be precise, stopped him from speaking to Gray. But whenever his father was not around, he would sneak off to Gray's place. Gray stopped him from coming when his father found out about it. According to his mother, Ethan's father beat him up, even though he was still only 4 years old. But the little boy didn't stop coming. It was only after he was beaten for a 3rd time, did Gray decide to stop him from coming, so his father wouldn't beat him anymore. He always took him as a younger brother. Gray, Ethan exclaimed happily on seeing him. Gray didn't change much, although he was taller now. His facial appearance was still the same. Ethan, how are you doing? Gray ruffled Ethan's hair while smiling happily. Fine, Ethan said while pushing Gray's hand away from his hair, while trying to arrange it back to the way it previously was. Come inches. He invited Gray in while holding his hand trying to drag him in. I can't come in. I came with some friends. Gray smiled as he saw the Ethan's expression. After leaving this place, he rarely thought of this boy who seemed to like him to no end. He thought maybe Ethan would have forgotten about him, but who would have thought he still had the same love for him? Oh, will you stay for a while? Asked Ethan. Unfortunately, no. I need to get back to the academy soon, Gray said gently. Oh, Ethan said with a sad expression. While looking around, he saw Void who was in Alice's hand. Wow, such a strange cat. He pointed at Void. He's my friend, his name's Void, said Gray. Your friend? Isn't it just a cat? Ethan asked in confusion. Humans should have only human friends, while beasts should have beast friends. When a human has a beast, it was usually as a pet. No, he's my friend. More than that, actually, is your mother at home? Gray asked. No, she went to the forge to see Dad, Ethan replied. Ethan's father was one of the few blacksmiths in Red City, so he was quite popular in the city, since he made some of the weapons in the city. Okay, is your grandma inside? Gray asked again. Ethan was still too young when his mother left, so he wouldn't know if she left any messages for him or not. Grandma died last year. Ethan's expression turned even sadder when Gray asked of his grandmother. Oh, sorry about that. Gray tapped him on his shoulder. I'll be taking my test soon. I want to be like you, Ethan suddenly said. Soon? But you're only 10, Gray said. No, I'm already 11. Ethan stood straight as he announced his age. Shit, I forgot about his age. Gray cursed. He couldn't be blamed since he focused more on training after he stopped seeing Ethan. There are times he even forgets about his age, much less the age of someone. Oh, that's true. Did my mom leave anything for me when she was leaving? He asked the question that originally brought him here. Chapter 226. No, Ethan replied. Okay, Gray nodded. Where did you go to? Gray looked at the place he used to stay with a complex emotion. It has been over 2 years now, yet he hadn't heard anything from his mother. This was exactly how his father left. Now it was his mother's turn. He could accept losing his father, but he couldn't take it if he lost his mother. I'll be going now, make sure to take care of yourself. Gray smiled softly to Ethan. I will come find you at the Lunar Academy, Ethan said. Gray chuckled but didn't say anything. He knew the chances of Ethan joining the Lunar Academy was slim. Ethan needed to have at least a purple elemental grade to be accepted into the Lunar Academy. But he couldn't discourage him, so he could only smile to him. I'll be waiting for you. He turned around to walk over to the others who were standing on the pavement at the side of the road. Hey guys, there's nothing about my mom here. We should head back to the academy. There's no use staying here any further, Gray said to the others. They headed to the city gate. Gray didn't forget to say goodbye to Ethan before leaving. Which way? Klaus asked immediately after the group walked past the gate. That way, I think. Gray pointed to the north with uncertainty. They didn't have a map, and Gray, who had traveled from here to the academy, didn't know the way. When he left for the academy, he was carried by Brown. When he came here as well, Brown brought him here, and he could barely see, much less seeing the route they took. Reynolds went over to ask one of the guards at the gate which way led to the Lunar Academy. The distance from here to the Lunar Academy wasn't by any means close, so the guard only pointed them in the general direction he could recall. It's already dark. Why don't we go back to the city? Alice suggested. When they came here, it was already almost sunset. But after they spent some time in the city, it was already dark. Thinking of the possible dangers, Gray and the others agreed to Alice's suggestion. They went back into the city, heading straight for an inn. The next morning, the group woke up feeling energized and started their journey to the Lunar Academy. This was the first time Gray would be personally going to the Lunar Academy from Red City, and he wasn't excited at all. How come we are unable to get a horse in your city? Klaus asked sourly. The thought of walking to the Lunar Academy was not something he could accept. He had been walking for so long in the trial land, and now that he left the trial land, he didn't want to walk for a long distance anymore. I've never really thought of it. Gray shrugged. The only time he has left Red City was when Chris took him to the academy, so he never really had any use for horses. Ray, you'll have to carry me. Klaus looked at Reynolds. In your dreams. Reynolds didn't even bother to look at him. Gray. Klaus looked at Gray hoping he would agree to carry him. I'll break your legs, Gray replied. Klaus didn't dare to complete his statement when he saw the look Alice gave him. If he were to accidentally call her name, then she would most likely beat him up. We'll get a horse in the next city, he said. The trio who were currently ahead of him didn't answer him. The group walked along the path with Klaus complaining as they walked. A group of 10 men who were dressed in black were closely watching the group as they started their journey. How come they managed to get here? One of the men asked. I'm not sure, but looks like the other group missed them. Another one replied. They are only kids. According to the reports, only the one in the 5th stage is a treat. The others aren't much of a challenge given us stages. A third guy said, HMPH. We should kill them now. The ladies at the tavern are still waiting for me. We've been here for 3 days now. A burly guy said with lust in his eyes. No, we need to make sure they're all alone. The 5th guy said. They all stood in the forest looking at the group as they disappeared into the horizon. Let's go, we'll kill them once there's no one near. The 5th guy said. Just as they were about to follow the group, a man appeared before them, making them unconsciously retreat. Who are you? The burly guy asked after taking a step back. Death, the man said. He was the man Gray's mother left to protect him. When Gray went into the trial land, he couldn't get in even after trying on multiple occasions. He still couldn't go in. He almost fainted from fright. If anything happened to Gray while he was inside, he knew Martha would kill him. She wouldn't even want to know why he was unable to save her son. She'd kill him instantly. He waited outside for the entire time Gray spent in the trial land. Whenever the array lit up, he would always look at who was exiting it. When he saw Gray come out, he was exhilarated. He didn't accept Gray to be sneak attacked by the leader of the guards from the Azura Empire, but Gray's performance impressed him. He felt Gray's improvement during the time he spent in the trail land was massive. After all, Gray's reaction speed wasn't something others his age had. Void's appearance also surprised him. He knew of the space element, so he wasn't too surprised about it using it. He only found Void's appearance strange. He was the one who made sure Gray and his friends traveled here safely, and he planned on making sure they didn't face any problems from people until they got to the Lunar Academy. Chapter 227. Later that day, Gray and his friends could be seen walking on a forest path, and Klaus was surprisingly carrying Reynolds on his back. Gray still didn't know how Reynolds was able to convince Klaus to carry him on his back. He recalled Klaus was the one who was complaining at the start of the journey. Ho! Void, who was in Alice's arms, glanced at Klaus and Reynolds with a weird look. Yeah, Gray replied. I know I've said this a lot of times, but your friends are weird except for Alice. Alice is nice, said Void. Heh, at least they're not that crazy. Gray chuckled, not feeling offended by Void's statement. He didn't need anyone to tell him his friends were weird. He knew their personalities, but he loved them. Life wouldn't be the same anymore without them. Yeah, but I think they're not far from it, Void added. Klaus and Reynolds were currently arguing while Reynolds was still on Klaus's back. Gray looked behind him and couldn't help but wonder where Reynolds' confidence came from. Reynolds was stronger than Klaus, which is well known by the group, but he was currently on Klaus's back. Given Klaus's personality, he would most likely slam him into the ground when their argument gets to a heated stage. Wait, what are you people arguing about again? He asked, trying to stop the duo before it's too late. If magical beasts ruled the world, who do you think would be the leader? Klaus asked. Well, I think it's a Hydra, right? Reynolds interrupted Gray. Of course not, it's a peak.ock with a multicolored tail. Klaus said angrily. Wait, do peak.ocks usually have a single-colored tail? Gray asked, a little confused. Shut up, Gray. Peak.ocks are amazing magical beasts. They're not only beautiful, but they're also strong when using any of the elements. Also, most peak.ocks are at the very least dual elementalists, said Klaus. PFFT Gray. Can you believe this guy? How can a peak.ock be as strong as a Hydra? Have you forgotten they have over 3 heads? And according to legends, each head not only uses one element, but it can also work separately from the others. Reynolds laughed out loudly. Hydras were legendary creatures just like dragons, griffins, phoenix, and the rest. According to the legends, it was said that they were a type of dragon. They are said to have 2 heads from birth, but with time, they would start growing a 3rd head that not only has a different element from the first 2, but can also operate on its own. There are very few records of Hydras having only a single head. Most of them had at least 2 heads. It was also said that if one of a Hydra's heads was cut off, it would grow 2 new ones from the wound. That's how it's said to grow multiple heads. How could a colorful peak.ock be stronger than that? I personally feel that dragons would be the leader, Gray said after finally getting the chance to speak. Can dragons regenerate heads? Reynolds asked. No, I don't think so. Gray shook his head. Is the tail of a dragon as colorful as a peak.ock's? Klaus asked. Not really. Gray shook his head once again. Okay, now go over there. Let the real men argue which magical beast is better. Klaus pointed at a spot not too far from them in a mocking way. Gray was left speechless seeing how the 2 chased him away. It was like they didn't even think of the strength of a dragon. Most people regard dragons as the rulers of the magical beasts. How the hell does these idiots' thought process work? He asked internally. Of course, he didn't dare to continue arguing with the duo. In regards to strength, he was the strongest. However, he knew Klaus and Reynolds wouldn't try to beat him up, rather, they'll team up and curse at him. He could barely face either of them one-on-one, much less when the duo ganged up on him. They continued walking before what Gray predicted happened. Bang! Reynolds slammed into the ground hard after being thrown by Klaus. Not expecting it, he couldn't resist it. FUCKU. Either you accept that peak.ocks are the strongest, or you get out. Klaus pointed at Reynolds, who was currently lying on the floor. Gray and Alice looked at them but didn't try to stop them. Do you think Reynolds would beat him up? Gray walked closer to Alice and asked softly. Yeah. Alice nodded. Damn you. Peak.ocks are nothing. They wouldn't even last a second if confronted by a Hydra. Reynolds stood up angrily and pointed at Klaus. The duo soon got into a hand-to-hand brawl with Gray and Alice watching on from the side. With both boys using their fists, it was a battle filled with screams from both sides. I'll stop them. Gray shook his head as he walked over. What do you want? Klaus, whose head was locked between Reynolds's arms, asked when he saw Gray approaching. Stop fighting. We need to get to the next city before it gets dark, Gray said, but made sure to keep his distance from the duo. Damn you, I still want to beat him up, Klaus said. Me too. Reynolds raised one hand which Klaus capitalized on to escape. Gray looked at the duo, feeling a little helpless. Sometimes, he felt like he was speaking to two kids. He walked back to where Alice was standing. Just as she was about to take over, an idea struck him. He quickly went back to where the duo was facing off against each other. How about this? We'll fight hand to hand without using any elements. If I beat any of you, we'll leave immediately, and you wouldn't delay us any further, Gray proposed. And if we beat you? Reynolds asked curiously. Then you beat me, isn't that enough for you? But remember, we'll start the journey immediately after the fight, Gray said. Klaus and Reynolds looked at each other, and the duo who were previously fighting against themselves drew nearer. Hey, do you think this is a trap? Klaus whispered in Reynolds' ear. I think so, but beating him sounds good. Also, if he cheats, I'll summon my elemental warrior, Reynolds said thoughtfully. Deal. But remember, you are not allowed to take revenge after we're done beating you up. Klaus agreed to Gray's proposal, while also warning him. Of course, shall we? Gray motioned as his lips curved upwards. Alice by the side shook her head while staring at Klaus and Reynolds in pity. She still recalled Gray's insane physical strength, yet these two morons readily agreed to be beaten by him. Gently sing void, she watched as Gray prepared to pummel the duo. They've been too much of a headache lately. This should teach them a lesson. She nodded at the thought of Gray beating them up. Chapter 228. Gray looked at the duo. He almost felt pity for them. Well, almost. I'm coming, he declared. Klaus and Reynolds prepared themselves, thinking they would beat Gray up. They've always wanted to beat him up. Now that he presented the opportunity to them, they didn't want to miss it like the last time. According to their plan, they would have beaten Gray up after they left the trial land, but because of the sneak attack, they couldn't beat him up. Their pupils dilated the next second. Fuck Gray. No cheating. Klaus was the first to curse out. Who's cheating? Gray asked as he appeared behind him. Bam! He threw a blow at Klaus's back that sent him flying. Gray, how could you be so cruel? I'm your friend, Klaus yelled as he landed on the side of the forest path. Damn it. I forgot about his insane physical strength. It's all that bastard's fault, Klaus complained while rubbing his back. He didn't even try to stand up, since Gray would just pummel him back down. On seeing this, Reynolds immediately started retreating, praying that Gray would focus on Klaus so he could escape. And where are you going? Gray asked with folded arms. Nowhere, I'm only creating some space between us, so that I can beat you up properly, Reynolds replied, still retreating. Oh really? How about this? I'll let you attack first, Gray said, motioning to him to give it his best shot. No, why don't you just let me go and beat up Klaus in my place? Reynolds said, pointing at Klaus, who was still on the ground. Klaus jumped up when he heard this and started cursing at Reynolds' shamelessness. Gray turned to look at Klaus, and to his surprise, Klaus fell back to the ground, pretending he never stood up. Reynolds continued retreating when he saw this opportunity, but just then he sensed someone behind him. He exclaimed in surprise when he realized Gray was no longer standing in front of him. Shit. How could I have forgotten? It's all Klaus' fault, Reynolds complained inside. Since you don't want to attack, then I will. Gray's voice sounded out before his figure appeared at Reynolds' left-hand side. Bam. Just like Klaus, Reynolds was sent flying with a single punch. He yelled before crashing into the ground a few meters away from Klaus. PSST, don't lie so close to me. Go the other way, Klaus whispered to Reynolds. This is bad. How do we escape now? Reynolds whispered. Play dead. Maybe he'll let us go if he sees we're hurt, Klaus said. Just as Reynolds was about to speak, he heard Gray's footstep coming closer to them. Without any other choice, he yelped in pain, hoping Gray would take pity on him. Gray smiled and stretched his arms. I'm going to enjoy this. Bam, bang, bam. The sound of fist hitting flesh rang out on the forest path, accompanied by the screams of pain from both Klaus and Reynolds. Alice, who was watching from the side, couldn't stop laughing, especially when Klaus and Reynolds started shouting like they were two ladies who were about to be raped. 3 minutes later, You bastard, I'll get you for this. Klaus muttered while raising a fist. Of course, he was the only one who heard it. He was already hurting all over. If Gray heard what he said, then Gray might probably continue beating him up. What did you say? Gray, who heard his mumblings but not the exact words, turned around with his left brow raised. Nothing, I said nothing. Klaus quickly said, I don't trust you. Gray squinted his eyes and stared at Klaus seriously. Come on, I win. Let's get going. He laughed before turning around. He was 100% confident that Klaus cursed at him, but the reason he made a deal with them was so that they could quickly get to the next town. There wasn't any need in delaying any further. Besides, he has had his fun, and knowing the duo, he knew they would most likely plot revenge against him. This is all your fault, Klaus and Reynolds said simultaneously while looking at each other with sparks flying everywhere. From the looks of things, they were about to start fighting again. Alice couldn't help but place her hand on her forehead. These two are just crazy, she mumbled. You two better start walking, or else what Gray did to you would feel like heaven compared to what you're going to suffer in my hands. She looked at them with fiery eyes. The duo stood up instantly. Unlike Gray, Alice wasn't that lenient. And unlike Gray, they couldn't get revenge on her, so getting on her bad side was not a good idea. Immediately the duo stood up. Klaus looked at Reynolds before saying, It's your turn now. How do you expect me to carry you in this state? Reynolds spread his arms. It's none of my business. Our deal was to switch, and we're switching now. Klaus demanded. Damn you, I'm not carrying you. Reynolds didn't give in. He couldn't give in. He was exhausted just like Klaus. Klaus and Reynolds continued quarreling as the group advanced in the forest path. They would occasionally encounter some people on the way. After 2 hours, they still haven't gotten to the next city, and Klaus and Reynolds were already getting tired. Gray was forced to stop the next person they encountered to ask if they were already getting close to the city. The person told them they were only an hour away from the city. The news invigorated the group, and they surprisingly saw the visage of the city within 30 minutes. Let's go. I need to eat, Gray said while patting his stomach. Chapter 229. Gray and his friends soon got to Xivier's city gate. This was their first time here, and they didn't plan on staying long. There were 2 queues at the gate, and they joined the one on the right. Klaus suggested they skip the line. They were already in the origin plane. In a city this small, the mayor shouldn't even be at the peak of the arcane plane, much less the origin plane. Gray and the others opted to go with the queue. They didn't want anything that would draw attention to them, especially Gray. After waiting for a while, it got to their turn. The guard looked at them properly before saying, 50 silver coins per individual. He had a cross-shaped scar just above his left eye. It was most likely caused by a sword. These guards were only in the fusion plane, so they still relied on their bodies and weapons for battles. Oh, Gray exclaimed slightly, not expecting that it would be this expensive. However, he didn't bother about it, since it was something they could easily cover. Although when he previously went to the capital he didn't pay a dime to go in, he didn't want to make an issue out of this. Just as he was about to take out the coins to hand them over to the guard, he heard an elderly man quarreling with one of the other guards on the other queue. What do you mean 25 silver coins? Since when was the charges this high? The elderly man asked angrily. If you can't pay, then move to the side. There are others who would like to enter, the guard said without any shred of pity. It has always been 5 silver coins. In only 2 months you people increased it to 25 silver coins. The elderly man argued. Move aside, old man. If you don't want to go in, then leave this queue. The guard shoved the elderly man away. Gray and his friends' gaze switched from the elderly man back to the guard in front of them. 25. Reynolds whispered to Gray softly. Just forget it, we'll be out by tomorrow. Gray waved. He couldn't help but glance at the old man who was pushed aside once again. The elderly man fell on the ground after he was pushed aside. Should we beat them up? Klaus whispered to the group. No need to cause so much trouble. It's just 50 silver coins. Alice said nonchalantly. Yeah, your family is rich. It really isn't much. Reynolds and Gray, who wasn't as rich as the duo thought. They looked at Klaus scornfully. How could he be so stingy? Although, They didn't really support the idea of also paying so much to enter a city, especially one this small. After all, this doesn't usually happen. Maybe it's just their rule. We'll pay and head inches, Gray said to the others as he prepared to go in. Are we going to let them do that to the old man? Alice asked, a little taken aback. Gray glanced at the old man but shook his head. He didn't want to get into an unnecessary situation because he wanted to act as a hero. Even though there shouldn't be anyone on a higher plane than he currently was in this city, he didn't want to involve himself in something that isn't related to him. Let's go. He should be aware of the rules here. I don't think this is his first time. Gray and the boys were the first to hand their coins over and head in. Alice was a little more concerned for the elderly man, so she walked over to where he was. Hello, sir. She assisted the elderly man in standing back up. These people are increasingly getting greedier. It was usually 5 coins to enter the city. Now they've increased it by so much. The elderly man said sadly. Okay, I'll help you pay the entry fee. Alice smiled softly. Oh, thank you, young lady. The elderly man almost bowed to her in gratitude, but she quickly stopped him. Inside the carriage, 2 young men were closely watching the gates. They both looked to be around their early 20s. One of them had sharp eyes with a thick brow, and the other had a long face with short beards and long curly hair. What do you think of the girl? The young man with sharp eyes asked his companion. Not bad. I don't think she would stay here for long, said the young man with curly hair. You can have her now. My father is the mayor here, and with your strength, she should feel honored. The young man with sharp eyes said fawningly. No, just find out where she's going. The young man with curly hair said calmly. Okay. The young man with sharp eyes called a guard over to the carriage and told them to find out where Alice and his friends were heading towards. 20 minutes later, the guard sent someone to inform them about Alice's current whereabouts. It wasn't really hard to locate them since as soon as Gray stepped into the city, the first thing he looked for was an inn. The group was currently eating on the ground floor. They were sitting at the table on the far end of the inn. There were few people in the inn other than the group. Gray looked outside the inn with squinted eyes. We're being watched, he said calmly to the others. A sharp glint flashed through the boy's eyes, while Alice smiled lightly. Stay. I don't think we need to go out. Gray held Klaus's hand just as he was about to stand up. While the group was still eating, a carriage stopped at the front of the inn. 2 young men stepped out of the carriage, walking elegantly into the inn. As soon as the innkeeper saw them, he quickly ran over to them. What brings you here, young lord? He asked with a slight bow. Nothing, you can go now. We want to take care of something. The young man with sharp eyes patted the innkeepers on the shoulder and threw a glance at Gray's table. Chapter 230. Gray looked around when he saw people walking out, but he didn't bother about it and focused on his meal. He sent out his spiritual sense to inspect the young men who walked in. He was taken aback when he sensed that the young man with curly hair was in the origin plane. Although it was only the first stage, it was not something you see every day, especially in such a small city. The young man with sharp eyes was in the late stages of the arcane plane. From the way he acted towards the young man with curly hair, it was easy to figure out he was trying to get on his good side. Both young men approached the group who focused on their meals. Hello, the young man with sharp eyes said with a pleasant smile. He was met with silence. Neither Gray nor any of them turned to take as much as a look at him, much less replying him. Even Void didn't spare him a glance. That was what annoyed him even more. His facial expression changed. Not just him, the young man with curly hair, as well as the innkeeper's expression changed as well. They couldn't believe Gray and his friends were this rude. The young man before them was the son of Xivia's city mayor, such a big figure, and he was given the cold shoulders by a group of brats. The young man restrained himself from attacking before flashing a smile once again. Hello, can I have a moment please? He asked, still wearing the same smile. Can we help you with anything? Reynolds stopped eating and looked at him. No, I noticed you're new here, and seeing how you were scanned at the gate, I decided to help you guys while you're staying here. The young man replied. Oh, that? Well, we didn't want to waste too much time there. It's just 50 silver coins anyway. Reynolds waved with a forced chuckle. He didn't want to speak to him, but seeing him standing there with no one answering him, he opted to talk to him. Gray couldn't be bothered with answering the young man. Klaus would most likely curse at him. if he were the one who answered, and Alice was the only one who might probably talk to him properly. But she didn't want to speak to him as well, so he was forced to do it. Well, in our city, we don't allow good people to be scanned, the young man proclaimed. What about bad people? Klaus, who hadn't spoken a word, asked while still eating. The young man who was about to speak almost choked on his words when he heard Klaus's question. Who's this moron? He asked himself. He chuckled awkwardly without replying. The young man with curly hair cleared his throat. Where are my manners? I'm Smith, and this is Richard. He introduced himself as well as the young man with curly hair behind him. Reynolds looked at Richard, who was behind Smith. Seeing Reynolds's gaze, Richard nodded as a sign of greeting, which Reynolds reciprocated with a wave. Here are your coins back. The guard has been sent to the dungeon where he would be punished for his crimes. Smith placed the coins on the table. Other than Reynolds, no one else was speaking to Smith. This made him feel extremely awkward, but mostly angry. If not for Richard telling him not to do things aggressively, he would have already summoned the guards to beat up these fools. He didn't know what else to say since there was literally nothing for him to speak about. Richard slowly stepped in front of him, approaching Alice. Helping that old man was very nice of you. He stood before her. Oh, thank you. Alice finally raised her head to look at the young man who was standing before her. She didn't see anything special about him. Maybe it was because she was always with Gray and Reynolds, which made her expect all guys to be just as handsome, or at the very least, at Reynolds' level. But this guy was below Reynolds, making her feel somewhat totally uninterested. It's nice meeting you, I'm Richard. Richard stretched out his hands. Alice, those are Reynolds, Klaus, and the Grey. Alice introduced the others to them as well, but she refused to shake his hand. Richard withdrew his hand but still wore a smile. I'd like to invite over to stay at the Mez Villa, if that's okay with you. Alice was about to refuse when she saw Klaus nodding his head. Even Gray looked at Klaus a little surprised. Since when was this bastard so friendly? The trio who was familiar with him thought. Forgive me, I've been too hungry, which made me a little angry. We'd love to go to the Mayor's Villa with you. Klaus stood up and shook Richard's hand. Haha, it's okay. I can understand how you feel. Richard chuckled while shaking Klaus's hand. It's good you understand. Why don't we go now? Klaus asked. Sure, if it's okay with your friends. Richard nodded. They're good with it. I feel a strong connection with you. It's like we're meant to be friends. Can we be friends? Klaus asked, leaving Gray and the others speechless. Of course, Richard replied. He didn't care about Klaus or any of the other boys, but if it will bring Alice closer to him, he didn't mind befriending them for now. Haha, great. As my friend, why don't you help us with the bills for our meal? You see, we were robbed on the way here. Klaus laughed before saying the last part with a sad expression. Huh! Everyone around the table exclaimed, including Gray and his friends. But they quickly hid their expressions, so it wouldn't look like Klaus was lying. Well, he was lying, but they didn't know what he was planning, so they had to play along. Richard had an awkward expression when he heard this, but he quickly put on a forced smile. Of course, take this as my first gift to you. He laughed softly. Haha, great. Klaus laughed. Come on guys, let's go to the Mayor's Villa and cause some havoc. He added to himself. This is the end of this video. Thank you guys for listening. Hope you enjoyed and wish you wonderful rest of the day. The silent Ruptors out.